The volume's not so good, but you can hear me. Awesome. And that's Remy over here. Hi, Remy. All right, let's get started with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we have a packed agenda, so I'm gonna keep it moving today. Strict time limits, strict Q&A. So we have we have a couple of quick one quick presentation, one substantial presentation, and a substantial hearing. So for something we will vote on. So just one vote today, folks. For the hearing, if you've signed up online, please do not sign the sheet again here if you haven't yet. We have at least 30 minutes of public comment to get through during the hearing. And that's just the hearing alone. So we got to keep things moving. Please follow the wait rule. Why am I talking? WAIT. Please listen to each other. Only ask questions of the community. Anything else, follow up offline with the folks you will need to while they are here. Questions are for board members only. If you are not a board member, please follow up with the representative offline. And that is it. So without further ado, let us get to public comments from our representatives of the elected officials, starting with Tiffany Echeverria. After Tiffany, Evelyn, if you want to come line up. Mahfouzal, you're next on the list. 2 minutes, yeah. And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all again. My talking points are kind of long, so I'm kind of going to read them a little bit verbatim just so I get everything in for you guys. So I want to talk about some legislation that the Congresswoman has co-sponsored late last month. So she has co-sponsored the Affordable Housing and Area Median Income Fairness Act, which aims to increase the supply and lower of the rents for affordable housing and to access calculations of the area median income for purposes for federal low-income housing assistance. Another bill that she co-sponsored on is called the Access and Mental Health Act, which aims to amend Higher Education Act of 1965 to support graduate programs in mental and behavioral health professions at minority serving institutions. So today, the Congresswoman put out a press release that is announcing that the Department of Health and Human Services has awarded $2 million grant to the floating hospital, which will be used to expand their 41st Street main clinic here in Queensbridge. Now, for community project funding, she put in a request for community projects of funding for Sunnyside in regards to green infrastructure, rain gardens, as well as infiltration basins, and porous concrete panels. Now, as for Blissville, the the DEP is willing to do a walkthrough to identify future projects to adjust stormwater impacts. Another project that the Congresswoman is requesting is for the Thompson Avenue Safement improvements. This improvement will serve as a bike connection between Queens Boulevard and Jackson Avenue / 44th Drive to help commuters into Midtown Manhattan, downtown Long Island City. This will also help with the it's slipping my head right now, but the city's putting a, oh my gosh, it's been a long day, guys. But the city is basically putting a fee to come into Manhattan below 60th Avenue or Street. I forget which one, but this will help address that. And then lastly, some staff at the Congresswoman's team attended the LIC and Hunters Point's Collision second community engagement workshop to see the draft vision plan for resiliency. The communal collaboration is a joy to see, and we extremely look forward to more initiatives. And thank you so much for your time.
Questions?
Questions?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much. Evelyn?
Debbie? Hi, my name is Evelyn Lee. I'm from Congresswoman Griezmann's office. I'll be kind of quick. Just a few announcements for the things we are doing, like the events we are doing in the next few weeks. So first of all, I announced this last month, and we are still seeking a local veteran, Gold Star family member, or active duty spouse for a 2-year paid position in our Northeast Queens office. This person will work closely with the military and the veteran constituent in Queens to help with the federal agencies, serve as a liaison to local veteran service. And so I'm gonna be back there. So if you know anyone who might be interested, please let me know. And I'll give you my contact information so you can send their resume or any details. And secondly, our office is now accepting submissions for the Congressional Art Competition. This competition is open to high school students in our district and is part of the National Art Contest that held each year by the House. So submission would be no later than May 6th. And for more information, you can call our office. And thirdly, we are gonna host on May 3rd, we're gonna having a small business legal desk in our office. That's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And also remember, this is not a one-time thing. This is just an event for us, but also this whole program comes from 2022 when Congresswoman secured $1 million in federal funding for the Queens Chamber of Commerce Small Business Legal Desk Program. So we also have long-term, office there and, phone number, and everyone was there to ready to help. So any small business owners, you're welcome to call them anytime you need. And lastly, in collaboration with 100 Suits, we are gonna have a job fair tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Queens College. And the event is free for all, but you have to RSVP. So I'm gonna be up there, and so we have a QR code. I have the website link. So if you need that, please let me know. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions?
Thank you.
Okay, we're joined by a guest, Honorable Senator Kristen Gonzalez.
Thank you, guys. Hi, good evening, everyone. How are you doing? Good. I wanted to just come today personally to report back on the budget process that we just completed. We passed our executive budget of about $237 billion. And I know when I came here a couple of months ago, and apologies for not being here, in the last few board meetings, we've been up in Albany for the legislative session. But when we attended, we heard a lot about folks' concern around what we were doing from a climate justice perspective, from a housing justice perspective, a healthcare justice perspective. So I have some report backs for all of you. So first and foremost, on the housing front, housing became the biggest topic in this year's budget and was the driving factor for why the budget was late this year. And a few key things that I think are important for this group of people is, myself and other legislators were holding the line on tenant protections. So any new program for tax incentives for real estate developers, in this case, we now have 485X as the new program for 421A, would be accompanied by a bill called Good Cause Eviction. And I think I've spoken about this bill in this space before, but just in case it's newer, the bill was essentially a defense in court for tenants who wanted to have a cap on their rent increase at the end of their lease, and also an ability to renew their lease if they haven't broken any of the terms of the lease. And that was a really hard fight because our initial bill said that we wanted rent prices for all tenants capped at 3% or 1.5% market rate, and every tenant to have the complete right to renew their lease. But this governor, and unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues who do not maybe represent as many renters as we have in our district pushed against that. And so the final version of our budget did include new tax incentives for developers, but a version of good cause eviction that had a lot of exceptions. So for example, it included a provision that any tenant, so this is where our office will come to help if you folks have questions about whether or not you qualify. If a tenant is in a building owned by a small landlord, which is now defined as 10 units or less, you do not qualify. If you're in a new building and that's been, built in the last few years, you do not qualify. Initially, the governor wanted to cap apartments that were luxury at $6,000, for example, for a one bedroom, or sorry, two bedroom, but that excluded most apartments in the Manhattan side of our district, apartments in the Brooklyn and Queens side of our districts. And so we were able to successfully get the FMR, or fair market rate, increased to 245%. I know this is sounding jargony, but what that means is more apartments are covered, but there are specific like cutoffs. And so we have those numbers. We're happy to circulate more information, but in this case, it means for a one bedroom, if your one bedroom is $6,000 and over, you do not qualify. For a two bedroom, it's $6,742 and over, and a three bedroom, it's $8,000 and over. You are carved out. All of this to say, with their version of good cause eviction and the also increase in the allowable IAI. So if you have a rent stabilized unit and your landlord does any improvements, passing that cost down was not a great picture for people in our district who are rent burdened. And so I actually voted no on the housing bill, on the budget bill that had housing in it, as a way to indicate that we will not accept anything less than the strongest form of tenant protections. And we do not want to make it normalized that we have a budget process that essentially guts so many of our bills simply because maybe there are large lobbying groups like the Real Estate Board of New York involved. So I think that was a really big fight. And for all of the conversations we've had in the space on housing, we're still fighting that fight. And our office is here as a resource. If you have questions about how this big housing package we just passed affects your specific unit, your building, any of your properties. So I wanted to start with a report back on that. The other big things in this year's budget that I think are important to note is we included, from a healthcare perspective, more money, almost $1 billion for safety net hospitals. I think that's going to be really important for this district as well. And then we had some more investment in green infrastructure and flooding, but we didn't pass bills like the New York Heat Act to make sure that we're actually not only moving to renewables, but helping with the increased cost of our utilities bills that we are all, myself included, feeling. And then we also had increased investments in things like higher education, tuition assistance programs. We increased foundation aid. So for K through 12, a lot of our schools should see an increase in funding as a result of that. And I think that's really important. We had other big things like Tier 6 reform, which I know a lot of folks who are, part of unions or public sector workers really deeply care about. And personally, I passed as chair of internet and technology, the nation's most comprehensive deepfakes in elections bill like anywhere, which was exciting. Not only because we have the elections this year, which means that, we don't want to have more information, more deep fakes influencing our elections, but we also had a companion bill around some of the more explicit content. So I think that's really important, whether you're Taylor Swift or Joe Biden or a city council election that is targeted by new technology. We really want to make sure that we're protecting the integrity of our elections and as a result, protecting our democracy. So I will pause there on budget updates because I want to take questions, but I'm really excited that we were at least able to get this budget passed. We have a lot more work that we're trying to do. And again, we'll always lean on all of you to lobby like our elected officials here. I know we have some good fighters, but continue to fight the fight. And I think for the second half of the year, as we have our session wrapping up in June, we'll be back, but we'll also be focusing more on in-district events coming in the fall, backpack giveaways, more street fairs. So also happy to be a partner if anyone here is having summer events or fall events. So I'll pause there. I see a hand already and happy to. Okay, cool. All right.
So,
Thank you for coming. Of course.
I know.
It was painful.
So, couple questions. I believe that on good cause that all landlords have to notify their tenants by some date, maybe in June, if they, right?
And then we could then have information on if your landlord is a small landlord or not in your lease as well. Because then we leave And then we also talked to.
485X. So I am the wonk who watches the Senate live stream. Really hard to follow what was actually in the bill. Is it better or worse? Or are we going to get more affordable units from it or less?
Is this better? Oh, I hear that. This is way better. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I think 485X is better than the 421A program because there are larger, it's larger. Great. So I think we will see more affordable units as a result of the new program. That said, we are, as excited as we are about new affordable units being built, we really should look at what our housing stock currently is like. And if, current developments that have taken the 421A tax incentive actually followed the rules and provided the number of affordable units they were supposed to. So another exciting thing in this year's budget is we passed a 421A audit so that we can actually start working across levels of government to hold some of these large real estate developers who have benefited from our tax dollars accountable and make sure that we're getting the maximum number of affordable units that we.
Okay, so believe it or not, I'm not going to ask you about taxing the rich because I know what happened and I understand it's an election year. But I did with some other constituents speak with your team today about the 3 climate bills that we thought would get in the some we get in the budget. I understand that there will be a Earth Day package that the Senate will put forth. Do you think they will get passed? And maybe you could push your assembly colleagues to do the same.
So that's the Senate is a smaller body, right? There are 63 of us and 42 Democrats. A lot of times we're driving the progressive policy, and it's been really great being a, you remember the conference because I've had this like direct contact and relationship building with so many of my colleagues to push them, for example, last year on the Bill Public Renewables Act and actually getting that across the finish line. Where we often struggle is in the assembly. So I'm glad you brought that point up. A lot of now my time is lobbying our assembly members. To answer your question, I think I feel good about where we are in the Senate. There's a lot of momentum around the climate justice and jobs package. I feel excited about the new Act. Senator Krueger has been really fighting for it. But I think you should all call your assembly members and get your friends to call your assembly members to make sure that we get both chambers passing it on Earth Day. So if we have some struggle.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I gave stuff in comprehensive version of the budget. It could also not be budget related if folks want to know anything. Talking to the office, things you're about to do.
I have a quick question. Did the definition of affordable have changed or did it stay the same? Because the definition of affordable is nothing close to actually affordable for most people.
Yeah, I fully agree. So how AMI or affordability is calculated is so it's something I know they did a lot of how the bill to make AMI affordability represent what the live and real experiences are, the working people in our district. But unfortunately, it's not in federal action, we can't change that on the state. And I think that's another reason why we're hard to the house staff and by Congress to kind of call the mind. But yeah. I do want to say though, with the community board, we have represent Long Island City. And there are a lot of conversations representing the process that's kicked off. I really do want to be clear though that we want to push for like where our goal is to push developers even further, so not the minimum amount at 100% affordability, and not affordability, what we call deep affordability. So they don't have to follow the minimum of the federal government said. We can put them this. These are the rents that go for this area, and our office has been really vocal with a lot of the new developments.
So, yeah, I want to ask you about some of those buildings. factors. It has something you're willing to work.
So, yes, we had the Housing Access Voucher Program, and we also wanted to get passed in this year's budget. And again, really, I'm very disappointed at this executive, so this governor's office, for not being able to of programs like that to expand them, especially when we're in a housing crisis. But so we're still fighting to get that passed.
But those are also fair housing, fair housing.
Certainly on discrimination that happens, that shouldn't be happening. There are plenty, I hear plenty of instances where landlords are. Perhaps our office is here to help. So if you feel here to have or know someone who's here to have, please come in contact with our office and we'd be more than happy to connect them to resources, and also ourselves, pull back that. Please, and if there's something that you got for reason, maybe we can have out there.
Site visits, you could do, people could do testing, people do fair housing testing all the time, compliance. I mean, those are the things, especially in Long Island City, that you have these big expensive buildings. And even if I don't know, if somebody wanted to count the number of voucher holders in any of those buildings, I'm sure it would be low. So just food for thought.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, but yes, I'm sure that if we had the numbers in front of us.
Thank you. Mercedes, thank you. So I think I heard, but I just wanted to reference, we are really receiving the Senator's support regarding, I think he received today, regarding the facility that's in violation of all kinds of state pollution laws on Railroad Avenue. So thank you.
I know that those are requested that our office either follows up with or works in conjunction with the Attorney General's office. I know that there's been a little bit.
their own community farm. We also got to partner with a couple of organizations here in the district and do large spread community cleanup and also composting and other activities at the farm. As Senator Gonzalez just went over, we passed the budget 20 days late, not too late this year, but still pretty late. So just some other things that were included in this year's budget, $80 million for Mitchell Llamas, specifically for capital investments. That's something that the Assembly member was really pushing for to address the vital need in funding that a lot of Mitchell Llamas are facing right now, especially Big Six here in the district. We also got the basement pilot program, which here in Queens CB2 will be the only community board in all of Queens that will begin in the pilot program. Some upcoming events that we're hosting on Tuesday, May 7th, we have NHS of Queens doing intake at our district office. If you are a tenant and you have any tenant related issues, or if you're a homeowner, NHS of Queens has a lot of services for homeowners or people who are looking into buying a home. Please stop by our district office between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And then on Saturday, May 11th, between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m., we are celebrating AAPI Heritage Month at Elmhurst Hospital. So we invite you to join and stop by. And with that, I will take questions. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Okay, Brenda from Councilwoman Juan Ardila's office, and then Farah, are you here? Oh, yeah, you're next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brenda, the constituent liaison for Assemblymember Juan Ardila. Both the Assembly member and I hope you're all having a fantastic evening. We trust you had the opportunity to celebrate Earth Day. Last week here in our little pocket of Queens, in collaboration with the 108 precinct, our office organized a graffiti cleanup in Sunnyside and Woodside, concentrating on multiple businesses that were unfortunately tagged. If you have any areas in mind that could benefit from our cleanup efforts, please don't hesitate to share them with us. We're more than happy to assist. The member is also happy to announce that Sammy's Law has passed in the budget. Assemblymember Juan Ardila has been a steadfast supporter of Sammy's Law from the start. He casted his vote in favor of this crucial measure during the budgetary process, and he is proud to witness its progression. This grants NYC the authority to lower its speed limits to streets to 20 miles per hour. The passing of Sammy's Law is a testament to tireless advocacy of grieving families who have tragically lost loved ones to traffic violence. The Assembly member stands in solidarity with them as we take this vital step towards safer streets in our city. In addition, the ADU pilot program was also passed in the budget and will start here in CB2. This initiative empowers New York City to pilot a state-supported program aimed at ensuring the safety and legality of basement and cellar apartments. This will allow homeowners to receive state guidance and funding to bring basement and cellar apartments up to code for safer living. Lastly, Assemblymember Ardila is committed to the cause of tenant protections. While the current version of the good cause eviction may not encompass everything that he and his colleagues, advocates, and tenant organizers have been fighting for, it nonetheless represents a significant milestone. Your feedback and collaboration are vital in our ongoing efforts to address the needs of our district. If there are any questions or concerns about anything, please don't hesitate to contact our office at 718-784-3194. Thank you. Any questions?
Farah from Julie One's office.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. My name is Farah and I'm Councilmember One's District Director. Just a few updates. We rescheduled our RAD Academy from March 27, 2024, which was canceled due to an emergency at the DOHMH to Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, with a start time of 5 p.m. If you'd like to register, please email our office at district26@council.nyc.gov. This past month, Councilmember One stood with Big Reuse on Earth Day to call on Parks Department and to advocate for the Big Reuse site at Queensbridge, so that way Big Reuse can continue doing their composting work in the district. A few other updates. This Monday, May 6th, we will have our second town hall for the Heart of District land use project or rezoning community town hall project to create a vision for Northern Boulevard and Roosevelt Avenue. This event will be at 6 o'clock p.m. at PS 11. In addition to this, the Long Island City Neighborhood Plan, also known as One LIC, has two upcoming focus area meetings. One will be at May 16th on Zoom from 6:30 to 8:30, and the other will be on May 20th from 6:30 to 8:30 at MoMA PS1. Both of these meetings will go over the same materials, but one is remote and the other is in person. So feel free to sign up for the Zoom one online or attend in person at MoMA PS1 at May 20th. If you need any help with registration, please contact our office. And then lastly, for participatory budgeting, we finished off participatory budgeting with over 2,700 people voting this past session. And so we're excited to see which projects come to fruition. And the budget season has started. The executive budget hearings are going to be throughout the month of May. So if you would like to go and testify at any of them, please reach out to our office so we can share how to do that. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right.
Thank you, Barb.
Hello.
I know the council member only received the memo from today.
Yes, this morning.
Several weeks ago, the Blissful Association sent the same memo, and we haven't heard anything. Can you give us an update on our concerns?
Yes, so our staff is currently looking into it. I believe you met Julissa, my colleague. She's been looking into it and she's working on a plan to address it to you and hopefully get a resolution.
As a council member, reading the memo.
She's aware of it, but she hasn't gotten a chance to go through it because, as you know, she's on maternity leave. Yeah. You're welcome.
Are there any updates on the search for a South Sunnyside Park location?
So that's definitely something that I wanted to get an answer to before coming here, but I know that we're still looking into it. There's a lot of different things going in place, so I hopefully will have an update next meeting, but no guarantees. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, next up is Claire from the Queensborough President's Office.
Hi, guys. My name is Claire Collins. I'm a community board liaison at the Office of Queensborough President Donovan Richards. Happy early Mother's Day to the babies in the front. What's up? Okay, events. Wednesday, May 22nd, 10 a.m., Memorial Day observance ceremony, Memorial Garden, Queensborough Hall. Next, Wednesday, May 29th, 12 p.m., Older Adult Appreciation Luncheon at the Helen Marshall Culture Center, Queensborough Hall. Next, the next day, May 30th, our office is going to have the AAPI Heritage Month celebration, Queensborough Hall. And that one's going to start at 6 p.m. We're going to have Filipino food at that one. It's going to be good. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Have a good night. Oh, questions? Oh, yeah.
I know the borough president.
Oh, let's put him on mic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We appreciate the borough president's support for Newtown Creek. He received a letter today. I'd just like to bring that to the top of his memo regarding the pollution that's occurring from a facility along Newtown Creek. So thank you very much.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. And I have business cards. I'll be in the corner. If you need one, you can email me and I'll be here next month. Okay.
Thank you.
Next is Javier Figueroa from DA Cat's office.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Javier. There's been some interesting cases the DA's been busy with, ranging from topics from squatting to illegal briberies. I'm going to hand out the newsletter if anyone wants to read that. But one big one I just want to touch upon is there's been an indictment in the shooting of Detective Diller. The defendant was charged with the first and second degree murder in multiple accounts of criminal possession of a weapon. That's again all detailed in the newsletter that I'll be handing out, and that's it. That's all I have to say. I try to keep it short.
Questions? No. Thank you. And next is Monica Guzman from SCS.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Guzman, Sunnyside Community Services. Many of us, you know us for our senior center where we enjoy hosting all of you. But we also have programs for youth, for immigrants, for people who are homebound. And I suspect there's a number of people here from Long Island City based on the agenda. So I just want to point out that we also have a space in Long Island City on Center Boulevard. It's right above Santa Chiara. So please come to our, visit our website, stop by our office there. We provide caregiver support there for families who are caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's. And we have a workforce development program for people to become home health aides. So that's what's happening in Long Island City. Closer to Sunnyside, just want to let you know about upcoming events. We have a health fair on May 11th. It's actually in Elmhurst at our Beacon Community Center, but it's open to the public. There will be carnivals, games for children, and then resources that families can access about city services, health services. On May 17th, here in Sunnyside, we're inviting people to join us to come volunteer and help clean up the neighborhood. I have flyers in the back. We're gonna also take requests on what areas we should be cleaning up. So we're opening it up to the community. This will be our third one this spring. And people can bring their kids. Some of the children in our programs participate as well as our staff, board members, and community members. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Henry from the LIC Partnership. If you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hey, hi everyone. I just wanted to come here and remind everyone that LIC Springs is happening on May 18th, the Saturday, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. We're shutting down 6 blocks of Vernon Boulevard, and we have over 130 businesses signed up that are really excited to offer free events and other participating performances and just a good old time. We hope you guys can make it. And if you want any flyers for your business or flyers for yourself to remind yourself, I can stop by, and you can feel free to reach out to the info@licpartnership.org or look at our website. Thanks so much.
Any questions for Henry? No? All right, thank you. And thanks. Any more elected official representatives or our, no, not yet. Okay, so that is the representative section of public comment. Next is just general public comment. Has anyone signed up for just general public comment? Not having to do with any of the issues on our agenda today. I think there's just one. Wendy. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, Corey first. Unmute yourself.
Sure, thanks. Let me know if you can hear me. Good. Okay. All right, thank you. My name is Corey Hannigan. I'm a resident of Woodside. I'd like to thank DOT for greenlighting the Queensboro Bridge South Outer Roadway. Strongly urge them to expedite the project to be open before congestion pricing begins. This urgency really can't be overstated. Cycling rates on the existing shared use path are already at unsafe levels and have grown steadily over the winter, and these numbers will skyrocket with the new toll and coinciding warmer weather. We need this new space before that happens. I also want to applaud the City Planning Department for their City of Yes for Housing Opportunity proposal. The city's current residential vacancy rate is near 1%, virtually the lowest in our city's history. Our housing shortage is severe enough that it's creating a situation where people oppose quality of life improvements like shade trees or bike lanes because they might increase property values and thus rents. And this plan, which would allow walkable apartments above storefronts near train stations, is not a radical concept. It's common sense and a return to New York City's historical traditional development patterns. Likewise, universal off-street parking mandates make no sense in a city as walkable and transit accessible as ours, where the majority don't even own a car. It serves only to entrench car dependency and increase costs for everyone while further limiting our ability to build housing efficiently and affordably. Let's do away with it. Finally, I'd like to weigh in quickly on the Center Boulevard parking topic to say that the parking in question lies directly in the path of the Queens Waterfront Greenway, which unceremoniously terminates right where the parking begins. So whatever solution is reached, accommodations should be made to continue this essential safe mobility corridor further north. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. And now general public comment.
Thank you all. I'm Judge Wendy Lee. I'm the judge of the Civil Court of the City of New York. I'm here to say thank you for the volunteers, for the community board too, because all of us here, including our board members, our chairpersons, we're all volunteers here. And because of our volunteer work, our community is getting better for all of us. And so I want to thank for all of you for your selfish volunteer work for our community board number 2 neighborhood to make our city a better place to live for all of us. Thank you very much.
"30 seconds, great timing, though." So, any more, folks, no electioneering during the public meeting. If you want to leave some flyers in the back, please, but no, right, Steve? Yeah. Great. And now let's move to our first presentation, which is the DOT presentation for street improvement project for the opening of the South Outer Roadway to pedestrians on the Queensboro Bridge. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Rarely are we clapped before we come up to a presentation. Thank you for having us. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Van Ray, Deputy Borough Commissioner for the Borough of Queens. I'm here with Joe Patty, who's your borough planner, and Carissa Lidstrand, who is the project lead for the Pedestrian Projects Group. We're here to present on the Queens South Outer Roadway. Many of you folks joined us years ago, around the 2010s, to advocate for the closure of the South Outer Roadway after many crashes that had happened. After that, we did do some things, some minor things to shut the roadway, but still leave it open to vehicular traffic. After that time, the drumbeat for a new pedestrian roadway, as well as a pedestrian path, as well as a dedicated cycling lane grew, and here we are now. I want to thank you guys for your service. It's great to return. I'm now back in Western Queens serving for the Department of Transportation. This is my home board, so it's great to be back. There's a lot of familiar faces that I see here. So I just am really grateful to be here working on this project. We'll be back again next month with some more great news to share with you folks. But without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Joe, who's going to introduce Carissa.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Patty. I'm the Borough Planner for Western Queens, Community Boards 1, 2, and 5. I'm very excited to be able to present this to you tonight. It's a very important project for us as an agency and for you as a community. As many of you know, we are currently in the middle of replacing the upper deck of the Queensboro Bridge. And once we complete that project, which we're very close to getting to, we'll be able to open South Outer Roadway to pedestrians. And to complement that, we're going to be showing you some of the street improvements that we're going to be doing on the Queens side of the bridge, at the base of the bridge, to kind of encourage people to be able to walk across the bridge and safely get there. And I'd like to introduce Carissa Lidstrand. She's the planning team lead from our public realm unit. She'll be introducing the project to you now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. Okay, so you know my name is Carissa. And then I just wanted to kind of do a brief overview of where I'm at DOT. So I'm in the public realm unit. Some of what you're going to see in this presentation today reflects a lot of our goals and objectives of the unit. Some of that is creating new crossings and intersections, but we always want to be thinking about comprehensive planning when we're doing projects. And so these are some of the things that you're going to see throughout the proposals today. And so we already went into a little bit of background, and as a lot of you probably know, that during the de Blasio administration, it was announced that New York City DOT would close the South Outer Roadway to vehicles and open it to pedestrians. And so we want to be talking about how we make street level improvements, since we're going to be redirecting where pedestrians enter the bridge. And so we want to be looking at those improvements on both the Queens side of the bridge as well as the Manhattan side. And at DOT, we think of this as all one project. So although we are presenting to just your community board today, we're also coordinating with the Manhattan side of the bridge as well. And so some of the goals and objectives that we want to see in these street level improvements are creating a pedestrian network that is safe, accessible, and convenient. Although we're not relocating where bikes will be accessing the bridge, they'll still be accessing the bridge from the north outer roadway. We do want to be thinking about enhancements to the current bike network surrounding the bridge. And then we also want to be thinking about how we can maintain local access for businesses, residences, and city facilities that are in this area. And so really why we're here today is because the north outer roadway is over capacity. It's the only New York City DOT East River Bridge, there's 4 of them, that has a shared use path. All the rest are separate. And as I was mentioning, it's over capacity. Right now, the Queensboro Bridge has the second highest bike volume of those 4 bridges. You can see that in the chart below at about almost 7,200 bikes daily that cross over the bridge. And then we also have a lot of pedestrians that cross over the bridge daily as well. And then the south outer roadway. So this is where vehicles can get from Manhattan to Queens. So it's one direction. Currently, it's mostly passenger vehicles because there is a height restriction on the bridge. And then as we were mentioning before, there has been some upper deck work on the bridge that has been kind of ongoing since de Blasio announced that we would be closing the south outer roadway. So that's what we've been waiting on to clear up to open up the south outer roadway. And there's been some overnight construction that's been going on that has already closed the south outer roadway for a few hours every day. And so now I'm going to jump into some of the existing conditions before I get into the proposal. So thinking about the Queens side of the bridge, again, we're relocating the pedestrian entrance to the bridge. So currently it's along the north outer roadway, which is at Queens Plaza North and Crescent Street. And then we're relocating it to the southern side at Crescent Street and Queens Plaza South. And so we want to be thinking about kind of, pedestrians are going to be accessing this from a different location than before. Are there improvements that we can make? So some of the challenges that are currently in this area is that we have the main kind of access point is at 27th Street. And this is a pretty long crossing. You can cross it if you're at the signal when the walk signal comes on. But sometimes you get stuck on the median if you aren't at the light whenever the walk signal comes on. And then also recognizing that there's no current crossing on Crescent Street underneath of the bridge like there is at 27th Street. And also recognizing that the lower roadway access point already has a signal. And so are there ways that we can better connect pedestrians to this new entrance? And so again, looking at the bike network, we are not relocating where bikes will be accessing the bridge. Just to be clear, bikes will be on the north outer roadway and that will be bikes only. And then the south outer roadway will be pedestrians only. And then looking at kind of the vehicle network of the south outer roadway. Currently the south outer roadway, you can get to a lot of different destinations, but those same destinations can also be reached using the lower deck of the Queensboro Bridge. All right, so now we're going to jump into the proposal. But before I do that, some of the toolkit ideas that DOT has, I want to kind of share with you so that we can talk about it a little more in the proposal. So one thing that's really great about New York City DOT is that we have our own in-house concrete crews. So a lot of other DOTs in the US have to go through capital projects, which can sometimes end up being like 10 years to do projects. And we also have that. But if something is constructible by our in-house crews, we do have the ability to add some concrete if the drainage is right and different things. And so that's just something I want everyone to be aware of as we get into the proposal. And then we have a number of different things we can also add for projects like signage or markings on the ground or paint in different ways. And so I want to start by kind of looking at this conceptual design of our proposal. So on the upper left, we have the existing condition of where the south outer roadway comes out onto Queens Plaza South. And then we have a conceptual diagram of what we are hoping to achieve with this project. So one of the things that I will first point out is, so this is the south outer roadway. And so what we want to do is create this concrete landing that we believe is constructible in-house. So that means we can do a quicker timeline and get this in this year. And so the concrete landing is kind of the main part of the project because that's going to be the entrance and exit to the bridge. And then we also, as I was mentioning, want to connect to that existing signal that's over on the northern side. And so signalizing kind of the lower roadway of the Queensboro Bridge, and then making it safe for pedestrians to be crossing underneath the bridge infrastructure there. And then I'll show a plan view of this in a second, but we're also hoping to build a sidewalk underneath the elevated MTA structure that connects over to 27th Street so that the crossing distance is a little less over there. So this is the plan view. So again, we're looking at, this is Queens Plaza South. On this side, we have Queens Plaza North over here. And so this is the landing that you saw in the conceptual design. And then this is the new pedestrian connection. Again, this was already signalized at the lower roadway. And so we would just be connecting to that existing signal and then building out some concrete to make it safer for pedestrians crossing under here. And then also wanting to add this sidewalk that connects over to 27th Street. So as pedestrians are coming off of the bridge or going onto the bridge, you can make that connection easier if you're coming along 27th Street. And then we've also been coordinating with the MTA about building out this curb extension as part of their elevator upgrades that are currently in construction right now. And then so looking at this in the context of vehicles. So although we are closing the south outer roadway, there are other options from getting from Manhattan to Queens. And you can access that through the lower roadway as well as the upper deck, depending on where you're going. And then again, kind of just leaving this here because I know it's kind of a lot to take in. But again, a lot of this we believe we can do in-house instead of through a capital project that might take 5 to 10 years. And so kind of the last slide is talking about timeline. So one of the things that we mentioned is that we've been waiting on the upper deck construction work to wrap up so that we can open the south outer roadway to pedestrians. And we are still looking at kind of the late summer of this year for that to open. But we believe that we can do some of this work on both the Queens side of the bridge as well as the Manhattan side of the bridge before we open the south outer roadway. But then some of this work has to wait until we fully close it. And so that's kind of what this slide is detailing, is kind of what we think we can do before and after. But we are looking at still kind of late summer for the south outer roadway to open. And questions? Ooh, lots. Ooh.
All right, yeah, Laura.
Okay.
Laura, then Monica.
Just want to say,
Sorry, Laura. 10 minutes of Q&A. Go ahead.
okay, sure. Just want to say a very profuse thank you, but this cannot happen soon enough, especially with congestion pricing beginning on June 30th. Really want to know if there are any mitigation plans for that interim when we really expect bike and pedestrian volumes to spike.
Yes, we're definitely aware of the congestion pricing deadline of the end of June. And we are hoping that we could push this timeline up, but we're still in discussion.
Yeah, as somebody who's organized marches, rallies, stood there gathering petition signatures for this, just, you know, really, really big thank you. Cannot happen soon enough.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, Queens side, enter to the Manhattan. Really bad condition is a how stuck in a morning. I requested already DOT to at least space so that the traffic can smoothly. You are making the design it looks good to be surfacing before the start the next because upper level is need more work. So I'm requesting to the DOT make a surface to the entry level in Queens side so that the traffic can moving faster than usual and also the pedestrian is. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, hi. Over here. So this is great. It's fabulous. I don't ride bikes, but I do have lots of friends who ride bikes. And as someone who has walked the bridge a lot, what makes it scary is the mopeds and those electric bikes. So are you guys gonna do anything to curb or to just like put them out because it's so dangerous. It's very scary to walk that bridge with those. And I can only imagine for a bicyclist how it feels.
I definitely agree. Mopeds is something that we hear a lot. And so some of the things that we're looking to do is adding signage, maybe doing some educational campaigns out on the street. Also, maybe having some more enforcement of mopeds because mopeds are not allowed to ride in the bike lanes. But we do have different classes of e-bikes that are allowed to use the bike lane. So those will still be present on the bike lanes across the bridge. But the mopeds are a different class. And so that's something that we're very aware of and trying to work on kind of as a whole agency.
Yeah, at the first, I think it was your first slide that you had, you indicated that one of the first things you did was do a survey for the merchants on East 59th Street. Why did you do a survey of the merchants on the Queen side?
So that's a good question. We are not, I mean, the MTA is doing like the adjacent construction to the curb extension. So we've coordinated with them when they were doing some of their outreach. But we did not do a merchant survey to those businesses.
So just the Manhattan side was worth surveying. Second question regarding the enforcement that you were talking about before, having a traffic enforcement officer on the Manhattan side and on the Queen side could stop mopeds from entering these lanes. It's not like you'd have to have somebody running across the bridge chasing them. They just simply have to stop them from entering.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, so in advance of the South Outer Roadway opening, we're actually working with PD 114th on the north side to conduct some educational enforcement prior to the bridge opening. And then when we do open the bridge, we want to have teams there. And so we'll be working with precincts to do that. And periodically, not sure if you've seen us, we've been out on Queens Plaza North before. We're going to do that again. We're going to continue doing that as we move forward. So appreciate the question. I think we're going to actually ration that up a little bit more. Yeah. And then just to your first question, we have spoken to those businesses while they weren't surveyed. Many of those businesses and property owners actually favored a closure of the South Outer Roadway because many of those businesses had lost property. Many of you guys recall many of those vehicles that were coming off the South Outer Roadway were coming down at very high speeds, couldn't make that really heinous turn, and they were shooting right into those businesses. So we'll continue to conduct outreach after to make sure that the new condition jives with their businesses.
Take matters. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, is it me? Hello? Oh, okay, so I tried to clarify this, and I want to make sure I understand, because I think this is great, but I need to understand, does this mean that I can walk on Crescent Street and cross Queens Plaza without going up or down?
Correct.
It's amazing. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you. I do have another question though. So already in this area, we have people who drive in from Long Island and park. is there any way that that's going to be mitigated when it probably happens more when congestion pricing starts because our subway stop is overwhelmed already?
Do you have
Yeah,
thoughts on
yeah.
that?
So we are, today we actually put out a report on connecting to the core. Some of that highlights bike, bus, and pedestrian improvements to get folks into the Manhattan core. Within that, we are conducting some studies. Coming down the pike, we are going to have to do some things with CB2. So we will let you guys know any changes, but a larger analysis is happening, and those would be things that we'll embark on closer to CP and then further into the summer and then fall time as well.
Yes, hi. So I know there's some design features to kind of block some of the larger moped bikes. I think it's like Williamsburg Bridge has those piles on and off, for example. I noticed in the design, a big part of congestion pricing and a big problem in general that I think was kind of resolved with the Brooklyn Bridge bike lane was that it took over an inbound lane, as in making outbound traffic not impacted, which is important when you want to clear Manhattan, making inbound traffic a little more of a headache. I noticed here now we're going to 2 lanes on each way. Is there not was there an option to, remove an additional inbound lane, or is that just not feasible when given the options? I guess why take away another outbound lane instead of an inbound lane?
Right. Okay. I think I understand what you're saying. For the pedestrian.
Just in general, why remove an outbound vehicular lane when you can remove an inbound vehicular lane?
So one of the things.
Like the Brooklyn Bridge. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Right. Yeah. So one of the differences is that the South Outer roadway is kind of removed from the vehicles. And so when we're thinking about wanting to make a pedestrian only atmosphere, we want to kind of remove that as much from the vehicle so that there's not kind of that conflict or just having to smell vehicle fumes and that sort of thing. And so that's one of the considerations for the South Outer roadway. It also has a lot less volumes than some of the other lanes do. But we are, as congestion pricing kind of rolls out, we are kind of rethinking both like the upper deck, lower deck, and how things function both inbound and outbound. And it's something we're going to be monitoring to see if there are any changes that need to be made.
They were street curling.
James, last one.
So I am a cyclist that has been very familiar with the Queensboro Bridge, obviously the pedestrian side as it stands now, with the bike lane side. And I have to say, this is sort of a question, but with the Manhattan Bridge last year and that incident, that fatality that happened, I think it has to be something that is a priority for the agency to sort of figure out exactly. I think the term that was mentioned was a sort of educational enforcement, but I think it's pretty clear that there have to be sort of strict lines drawn and actual action in terms of if it's NYPD stopping someone, are they going to have the authority to do that? Are they going to want to do that? Yada, yada. I think if that intentionality doesn't happen here, there's going to be fatalities on the bridge. And I don't think anyone wants to see that. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was educational / enforcement. It wasn't educational enforcement. So what we usually do is we like to go out with the precinct and have a nice conversation with folks who are violating those rules. And then the next week we ticket them because they're the same riders that they were the previous week. And so we do ratchet that up. And it's something that we've done on Queens Plaza. It's something that we've done in a lot of areas. And it's something that we're going to look to do here and do that recurring with the precincts. We also meet monthly with the precincts as well. So not only will have bodies from the borough offices there at the beginning, but we'll consistently come out there and we'll look forward to working with other stakeholders and elected officials to do the same for folks who would support this project as well.
Great. Q&A there. Are you able to leave your information anywhere for?
Yeah. I'll have some cards. I'll put them over in the back if anybody wants it. Thanks, Anatol.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. Super exciting. Any public comment about this? I know there's no signups in person. Anyone online? Please raise your hand on Zoom. No? All right. Moving right along to the bigger one. The city of Yes. Oh, sorry. Wait, there was a hand. Sure. Yes. Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, is that it? Hi. Instead of having all this discussion around, going and looking and seeing and what they're doing, why don't you just put a sign up that no motorbikes are allowed and just bicycles? It already is. And they still go. So I guess you have to have police enforcement. Yeah.
There's if you look on, 43rd Avenue, there's like, well, this is the wrong way, but people still come, in my direction. So, yeah. All right. Anybody else? Nope. All right. Moving right along to the city planning presentation, City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. Katie's here. Oh, and on Zoom, yes. Yes, please.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, yeah, I do want to do that.
Hi, while Katie is setting it up. Hi, my name is Taekyung Yang. I am new to this board. I am the new Western Queens team lead at City Planning at the Queens office. I am here to learn from you and take notes and be here for any questions you may have. I am also joined by Winnie Shin. She will be coordinating and answering City of Yes housing opportunity questions alongside Katie. Yeah, hi. Hi. It's okay. Technical difficulties. Yeah.
Get on the Zoom and screen share. Oh, wait, something's happening. Oh, oh. Wait, he's texting right now. Oh, there we go, guys. Just like that.
We just waved that one. Get out.
Oh my goodness. Okay, my apologies, everyone. I'm hoping that nothing gets cut off there. So I guess if you can't see anything, shout and we'll figure it out. Oh, great. Okay. So again, hi, my name is Katie Crawford. I am the CB2 liaison from the Queens office from the Department of City Planning. So I'm here to deliver the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity presentation. Before I get started, I did print out some of the CHO worksheets. I tried to distribute them evenly as requests from one of the land use committee members. And I believe it also went out in an email, the digital version. So you guys can use that to kind of follow along. There are a number of different proposals within the whole City of Yes umbrella. So you can use that as we go. All right. Okay, so, I also want to let you know that I'm going to have a full presentation, but we will have time for Q&A at the end, so just hold on for that if you have questions. All right, so I'm excited to present to you City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, which is a citywide text amendment that will change zoning to allow for equitable housing development. These changes will enable a little more housing in every neighborhood by removing the barriers to housing growth. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is a citywide plan that will encourage incremental housing growth throughout the city. New York City is facing a severe housing shortage. The vacancy rate for rental apartments is historically low, only 1.4%, far below a healthy vacancy rate that would provide New Yorkers with housing options. In Queens, this is actually only 0.88%. Because our housing demand is greater than our housing supply, New Yorkers are experiencing very high housing costs. Over half of New York City renters are considered rent burdened, meaning they spend over 30% of their monthly income on rent. The lack of housing is also a direct cause of homelessness. Each night of 2023, over 92,000 homeless New Yorkers slept in shelters, which also included over 33,000 homeless children. Oh no. Are you guys controlling the slide or am I? Oh, you are? Okay, well, I won't even bother this. All right, so one more slide, please. Thank you, Hyuk-young. So most of New York City's housing was created in the first half of the 20th century. Since that time, housing production has fallen dramatically. That's in part because of zoning that has become increasingly restrictive since 1961. While housing production has decreased, the demand for housing has increased. There are a number of reasons for this. For example, households are smaller today than they used to, meaning the same number of people take up more space than they did before. Next slide. What recent housing production has occurred has been limited to only a few neighborhoods. In 2023, 10 community districts produced as much housing as the other 49 combined. CD2 is one of these 10 districts. CHO will help to spread out that growth in the future. When some neighborhoods aren't producing housing, that puts additional burden on other neighborhoods to produce more. Next slide. The proposals in City of Yes for Housing Opportunity emerge from the goals outlined in the city's Fair's housing plan, Where We Live NYC. Where We Live was created by HPD in collaboration with over 250 community organizations. It highlights how the city's housing shortage and affordability crisis have severely limited New Yorkers' housing choices. In a tight housing market, landlords can charge high rents and tenants are vulnerable to tenant harassment, poor housing quality, and displacement pressure as they compete with each other for a limited number of units. When there are few apartments to choose from, renters pay more. In Queens, 52.8% of renters are considered rent burdened. These conditions further worsen neighborhood-based legacies of segregation, discrimination, and concentrated poverty that have led to the deep inequities we see today, where neighborhoods have unequal access to resources and opportunities. Next slide. The average New York City household makes about $70,000 per year, but the average two-bedroom apartment in New York City is over $2,700 a month. This means that the average working family would have to spend about half of their income on rent just to house their family. Next slide. New York City's dire housing shortage has direct human consequences. These have been underscored in our extended community engagement process. DCP has met with over 100 groups, including nonprofits, tenants' right groups, faith-based organizations, and affordable housing providers. Each of these groups were able to share a unique and valuable perspective on the lived experience resulting from our housing crisis. When the city fails to produce housing, all New Yorkers feel the economic consequences. When people have to spend so much of their income on housing, they have less money to spend on everything else. Allowing New York to build more housing can help to create good quality jobs in construction and residential maintenance, adding an estimated $58.2 billion to the city's economy and creating 260,000 jobs. Next slide. Hopefully we're not off here. Are you on slide 10? All right, could you do one more? All right, I think we're
think we're good. Many city agencies work on policies and programs that aim to address New Yorkers' housing needs. The Department of City Planning is responsible for the city's zoning. Zoning regulates what can be built on a particular site, both how big the building can be and what it can be used for example, residential or commercial. Sometimes zoning includes other things like requirements for income restricted housing, but zoning does not fund new housing or directly control what will be built. It only establishes the rules for what may be built. How much housing gets built depends on many factors. Other tools the city uses to support good housing outcomes include subsidies or tax incentives to promote affordable housing units, programs for affordable home ownership, and tenant protections that guarantee New Yorkers' rights. Next slide. Changing the zoning can respond to these issues by increasing the number and types of homes available in every neighborhood across the city. If each neighborhood adds a little more housing, New York City can add a lot more housing overall without any particular neighborhood experiencing dramatic changes. Next slide. The text amendment is the biggest pro-housing change DCP has ever undertaken, and we will be touching the zoning for every single part of the city. We're also enabling more missing middle housing or low-rise apartment buildings in our low-density areas. We also aim to help homeowners in low-density neighborhoods by allowing them to add accessory dwelling units or ADUs to their homes and providing small buildings with additional flexibility to adapt over time. The Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP, will allow bigger buildings for affordable housing in every medium and high-density zoning district. Across the city, we propose removing residential parking mandates, which are making housing more expensive. There are also a range of smaller proposals, including enabling conversion of non-residential buildings, allowing more small and shared apartments, and allowing for residential campuses to add height-limited buildings. Next slide. And next slide. All right, now sorry, the text is the same on both. The map just goes from a citywide perspective to zooming in on CD2. So I can leave that for a second so you can absorb that, but it's the same text on both slides. All right, next slide. So now we're going to focus on just the low density proposals, and that should equate to what's on the sheets in front of you. Next slide. Low density proposals are affecting residential districts ranging from the R1 to R5 zoning districts. Next slide. Exclusionary zoning rules have made it virtually impossible to build housing in many low density neighborhoods, placing additional pressure on the high density parts of the city to produce more housing. This wasn't always the case. Small apartment buildings and 2 to 3 family homes are common in all New York City lower density neighborhoods, and were allowed in many places until as recently as the 1990s and early 2000s, when stricter zoning prevented them. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity will reintroduce modest buildings that are more naturally affordable than other types of construction, and apartment buildings at a scale in which they can take advantage of the existing affordability programs. Next slide. Together, these changes allow for the creation of more housing in low-density areas without changing the character of a neighborhood. Next slide. The town center proposal aims to create more missing middle housing in low density areas. Missing middle refers to a category of housing that's modest in scale and often affordable to middle income residents, a once common type of housing that's not often built in the city anymore. This proposal aims to re-legalize mixed use apartments or buildings with a ground floor commercial use and a few stories of housing on top. This is a classic New York City building type that exists along many low-density commercial corridors, and overly complex zoning rules make it almost impossible to build new ones. This proposal streamlines zoning rules, including limits on floor area and height, so that it is once again feasible to build 2 to 4 stories of housing above a commercial ground floor. In CD2, there are a few areas where town center zoning may apply. Could you do the next slide, please? Thank you. We examined 4820 Skillman Avenue, which is an R5D district with a C13 commercial overlay, which can already include both residential and commercial uses. However, current zoning has made it difficult to actually build the permitted housing. The town center proposal will make it more feasible to build housing above an existing commercial use on the ground floor. Next slide. The second proposal for missing middle housing is transit-oriented development. Transit-oriented development will allow for low-rise buildings, which are 3 to 5 stories, depending on the underlying zoning, on sites that are near transit and meet specific criteria. Next slide. First, the lot must be over 5,000 square feet. Second, the lot must be located on the short end of the block or a wide street, which zoning defines as being over 75 feet wide. Community facilities like faith-based organizations or libraries can also use these rules throughout the city on sites over 5,000 square feet where community facility space is present. The transit-oriented development rules would promote missing middle housing while also promoting sustainability by adding housing in areas with good access to transit. Next slide. In the rest of the low-density areas, we want to give homeowners more flexibility. Under this proposal, a 1 or 2 family home would be allowed to add a small accessory dwelling unit or ADU. A series of zoning changes are necessary to allow ADUs. First, only 1 ADU will be allowed per 1 or 2 family building in any zoning district. There are a range of types of ADUs, including backyard cottages, garage conversions, and basement apartments. These small units will provide housing options appealing to small households, like a young person moving into their own place for the first time or an elderly resident who wants to age in place. ADUs will not require parking, as many lots would have difficulty fitting both the ADU and additional parking spaces on site. Beyond zoning, ADUs will also have to comply with other rules such as the building code and housing maintenance code, which help to ensure the safety and quality of living spaces. Successful ADU programs in other locales, including Austin, Seattle, and the state of Connecticut, show that these units can give multi-generational families a little more space and help middle-class homeowners with household expenses. Next slide. A range of types of ADUs would be permitted: detached, attached, attic, or basement. Owners can decide for themselves if they want to add an ADU and what type works best for their home. The maximum size of an ADU is currently set at 800 square feet. Any ADU would need to have its own separate entrance. Detached ADUs will need to have a 10-foot distance from another building on a lot and will need to be 5 feet from the lot lines. This is to ensure the unit has adequate emergency access. Next slide. The zoning will have specific rules that grant additional flexibility to existing buildings that are converted into ADUs. This approach anticipates that ADUs will move in and out of use as a separate dwelling unit, and we don't want the building to move in and out of compliance when those changes occur. Additional ADU rules apply, such as the ADU does not count towards the dwelling unit factor in a zoning district. The ADU will be counted as residential floor area. As part of broader reforms covered earlier, all low-density districts will be getting a bump in FAR, which is intended to not only make districts work as they claim, but to also accommodate these ADUs. ADUs are permitted obstruction in rear yards for single or 2-family residences and are limited to 50% of yard coverage. ADUs will also have a height limit of 2 stories. Next slide. Citywide, there are significant opportunities for basement ADUs on small lots, but these homes also face particular challenges and therefore will be subject to additional regulations. Consistent with other rules for subgrade space, new ADUs will not be allowed in the coastal floodplain or in the special coastal risk districts. As we understand the additional risk of stormwater flooding outside of these areas, basement ADUs may be subject to additional regulations or review. DCP is working with a larger interagency task force, which includes the Department of Building, to further develop these rules and ensure that these units are safe for tenants. We know there are already many existing unregulated basement units in New York. Bringing these units into compliance is crucial for occupant safety, but will require changes to state and local laws beyond the zoning. Next slide. Our research shows us that many existing buildings are out of compliance, meaning they're not in line with today's rules. For example, an R41 district is a 2-family district that allows semi-detached buildings like the ones you see here. But buildings like these pre-1961 duplexes could not be constructed today because they have more square footage than is currently allowed and the rear yards are too small. These non-compliances can cause a big headache for a homeowner if they need to borrow money from the bank or if they want to make simple changes to their home, like renovating an outdated kitchen. We want to fix these rules, which will have dual benefits. First, Homeowners of existing buildings won't run into an issue when they're making an alteration to their building because the zoning will match what's actually on the ground. Second, you'll be able to build a two-family home in a two-family district and a multifamily home in a multifamily district, when today, the only thing that would be feasible is actually just a single-family home. Next slide. So now we're going to turn our attention to the medium and the high-density proposals. Next slide. And as a reminder, these are applying from R6 to R10. Next slide. Our focus is on creating more opportunities for housing, including affordable housing. To do this, we are proposing the Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP. It will allow apartment buildings to be at least 20% larger, so long as the extra space is occupied by permanently affordable or supportive housing. UAP is modeled after current rules that allow bigger buildings for affordable senior housing in some neighborhoods. UAP will allow incremental housing growth in neighborhoods and encourage affordable housing throughout the city, rather than concentrating it in a few neighborhoods. Next slide. The light orange indicates which districts have existing senior housing preference today. Through the UAP framework, all forms of affordable and supportive housing will be able to take advantage of the higher FARs already provided to affordable senior housing. Next slide. The dark orange indicates the few districts that don't have the senior housing preference today. In these areas, we'd create new FARs to enable the growth of affordable and supportive housing in every neighborhood. We also want to make sure that the zoning provides room to build the extra affordable housing required through UAP, so we'll increase the height limits where it's necessary. Next slide. So what does affordability mean for UAP? UAP will have an affordability requirement of 60% area median income. Area median income, or AMI, is a measurement of income distribution in a specific area and is set by the federal government and is a key metric in affordable housing. Next slide. At 60% AMI, UAP will serve lower income New Yorkers than our existing zoning tool, voluntary inclusionary housing, or VIH. UAP will replace the VIH program, but mandatory inclusionary housing will continue to exist. Income averaging, that means that instead of only including homes at the required affordability level, a building can include homes at a range of incomes that average to the required affordability. For example, a building could meet UAP's 60% AMI affordability level by including a mix of homes at 30, 60, and 90% AMI. Through this deeper affordability requirement and the introduction of income averaging, UAP can help to serve low-income New Yorkers who most need affordable options. Next slide. Here's one example of how UAP works. If a church located in an R6 district wants to build affordable housing today, they'd get an FAR of 3, regardless of whether they're developing market rate or affordable housing. This would allow them to build about 35 units. Under UAP, they would get an FAR of 3.9, but the additional 0.9 FAR could only be used for affordable housing. If it is, they can build about 10 to 12 more affordable units. 10 to 12 more units may not sound like a lot, but this is functioning at a citywide scale. So if every project had a few more affordable units, we could add a significant amount of affordable housing and no single neighborhood would experience a drastic change. Next slide. This is a rendering of how UAP will play out. Without UAP, the building is built according to the base FAR for market rate housing. The result is this 8-story building. Excuse me. With UAP, the building can be about 20% larger, which for this example translates to an additional 2 stories, as long as the extra space is permanently affordable housing. UAP can make a big impact on our housing crisis. In our preliminary calculations, we determined that had UAP been in place since 2014, with tax incentive and public subsidies fully in support, an additional 20,000 income restricted affordable homes could have been created and housed up to 50,000 New Yorkers. Next slide. Mandatory inclusionary housing, or MIH, areas would remain in place and can continue to be mapped when there are significant increases in residential density. This proposal would introduce some improvements to MIH. First, under this proposal, MIH option 3, previously known as the deep affordability option, could be applied as a standalone option. Today, it had to be applied as an alternative with MIH options 1 or 2. This would allow future actions to ensure deep affordability when MIH is applied. Some MIH FARs would be raised to meet UAP FARs. For example, R6A currently has an MIH FAR of 3.6, which would be then raised to 3.9. The options would remain in place, meaning the same percentage of affordability will continue to be required. Finally, the current MIH program is incompatible with tools that facilitate affordable homeownership. This proposal would exempt 100% affordable homeownership projects from the rules that prevent them from penciling out. Next slide. Lastly, we're going to cover the proposals, the citywide proposals. Next slide. So starting with parking, we'll be making parking optional for new housing everywhere, following the examples of many other major cities. Today, New York City requires new housing to include off-street parking even where it's not needed. These mandates mean less space for housing and increased construction costs, which results in less housing being built. The diagram on the slide represents how parking takes up a lot of space. 2 parking spaces is the equivalent to the size of 1 studio apartment. Building parking itself is also expensive and is an obstacle to housing growth, especially affordable housing. We want to prioritize housing over parking. Parking will still be allowed, and we anticipate that developers will respond to the market needs and continue to provide parking in areas where there is demand. Through removing parking mandates, we can help reduce the cost of housing construction and enable the development of more homes in each new building. Next slide. This example shows how lifting parking mandates can support housing growth. A developer sees this underutilized lot that's in a great location near transit and wants to convert the lot into an apartment building. The lot could accommodate 16 homes, but the developer stops at just 10 homes so he can waive out of the parking requirement. Because as soon as he adds the 11th apartment, he would be required to provide 6 parking spaces. By eliminating these mandates, the developer can fully build out the lot to include those 6 additional apartments. Again, 6 units might not seem like a lot, but when hundreds of sites across the city are able to build more housing, that incremental change results in a lot more housing for New Yorkers. Next slide. New York City has a diverse array of special districts that have been enacted to further neighborhood planning goals. As a general approach, the current proposal carries through any relevant changes to the special district in order to ensure these areas also have appropriate housing opportunities. The current proposals may be modified where the changes directly conflict with a special district's goal. For instance, many special districts have FARs that differ significantly from the underlying zoning. In those instances, the new UAP FAR would build on the special district FAR rather than simply eliminating it. The proposal takes a similar approach when considering the interactions of components and the special rules contained in the special district. Next slide. The landmark TDR program was created in the 1960s to relieve the financial burden of designated landmarks, which are subject to maintenance requirements and limited in their ability to redevelop or add new buildings to the lot. It would also allow landmarks to transfer development rights to more sites, including other zoning lots within a defined radius. The proposal would streamline the approval process when no bulk modifications are necessary to accommodate the TDRs on the receiving sites or when an applicant is seeking bulk modifications. Currently, the program is not available for landmarks in historic districts or low-density R1 to R5 zoning districts. This proposal would expand the applicability of the landmark TDR program to these areas. Next slide. There are additional proposals that would provide more housing and a wider range of housing types. First, conversions. Today, outdated rules prevent underutilized non-residential buildings like offices from converting to housing. For example, many buildings that were constructed after 1961 or are located outside of the city's largest office centers cannot be converted to housing. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity would make it easier for these conversions to take place. To do so, we want to expand these regulations citywide to go beyond office districts. That way, a broader range of underused buildings can be converted into housing. Second, we want to move the eligibility cutoff date from 1961 or 1977 to 1991, allowing more recently constructed buildings to be converted into housing. Third, we want to enable conversions to all types of housing, including supportive, shared, and dormitory. As shown in the second image, we will also, as shown in the second image, we'll also allow small and shared apartments through eliminating dwell unit factor, a measure of the minimum average unit size in areas with good access to transit. Today's available housing stock forces too many people to find roommates and occupy family-sized units. Enabling more small and shared apartments can relieve some of that pressure. Finally, previous development often took place under tower in the park style regulations called height factor. Although we've developed a more recent set of regulations called quality housing that result in better designed buildings with set height limits, some sites like NYCHA campuses and irregularly shaped lots cannot access those new rules. The proposal will allow height limited infill on sites that would otherwise be forced to develop tall, skinny buildings or nothing at all. Next slide. Next slide. The changes are the most significant proposals in City of Yes for housing opportunity. Overall, this text amendment aims to create a little more housing everywhere so that each neighborhood does its part to address our housing needs, and a few neighborhoods don't feel the intense pressure they do today. It's not just about more housing, but it's about more types of housing. Homes have different sizes to meet different people's needs, and crucially, far more affordable and supportive housing. Next slide. So I want to thank you all for listening to tonight's presentation. I know it was long and I know it gets complicated. So my colleague Winnie and I are here to answer any questions that you might have. Before we get started with that, I want to add that we are going to be talking about this at the next Land Use Committee meeting. So anything that's not covered here, we will get it wrapped up in discussion there. You can also send questions directly to the email that is cut off. My apologies. I can pass it to you.
Yeah, the email is housingopportunity@planning.nyc.gov.
Don't vote on this tonight. That's next month. 15 minutes on the clock starting with 10.
Thank you.
Wait, Tom, or?
First question, it wasn't clear to me to give it. Well, that factor always don't impact.
So for City of Yes for housing opportunity, it doesn't affect M districts. Most of our changes are relevant for residence districts,
So M1, 2, 3 are not impacted.
not through housing opportunity. There's
Thank
some,
you.
yeah.
That's good. Second item, there's a claim that I take, pardon, but let's say, that this is the solution to our unhoused. So I look at the low AMI, right? We talked about AMI earlier. Most of the people who I've worked with are unhoused, living in shelters, earn minimum wage. It's about 31,000 a year. How many of our unhoused living in the shelters are going to get housing out of this deal?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think really highlights how we have a serious housing shortage in New York City, which is why the number of folks who are living in our shelter system are so high. And one of the reasons for why there is not enough housing for folks is because of our restrictive zoning framework.
Right. So again, forgive me, I disagree with you. You're saying it's because there's no housing. I'm saying it's because they can't afford it. Most people living in shelters are working and they're making minimum wages, $15 an hour. That's 31,000 a year. Again, I ask you, how many people living in the shelters who are working, making minimum wage are going to be able to move into housing?
Yeah, fantastic. I have a question. And I think for example, for that particular population, some of the proposals that Katie highlighted, for example, universal affordability preference, which allows for bigger buildings for affordable housing projects that HPD is doing. They have term sheets specifically focused on creating homeless set-asides. So because of these zoning changes that allow for bigger buildings, that means those 100% affordable projects that HPD Housing Preservation Development is doing and that have those homeless set-asides will produce more units.
Have not been.
I'm sorry, but city planning does not build housing.
I understand that. They're making a claim, though, that it's going to solve our homeless.
One thing I would like to add.
A lot of relevant questions and we have very little time. I'm sorry. I want to thank Katie very much for adding in the slides that represented our district, because I know a lot of time at the end. And I have one specific question and then I can go to the others, but just occurred to me while we were watching. So the small and shared housing, we're going to remove the density. How is one concern that comes up over and over again that, you know, in our board as well as many others is the lack of family-sized apartments. And my concern is that removing the density factor will incentivize developers to build more studios and one bedrooms and fewer family units because they'll make more money that way. And I wonder if there can be, if you have considered a way to lessen that likelihood if you remove the density factor.
Yeah, great question. So for the small and share proposal, we're making updates to the dwelling unit factor or DUF and essentially areas that are in the transit zone. So that includes parts of this community board, for instance. It would help facilitate for more smaller shared apartments. The idea being that folks like right now are taking up family size apartments with like 2 or 3 roommates, and they're taking that away from families who might need it because 3 people earning 3 incomes versus like a mother of 2 kids probably aren't able to afford the same type of apartment. So the idea is that we can relieve the pressure on those family size apartments for folks who may want to live alone in more like central business districts. If we can create more small and shared units in those neighborhoods that are closer to their jobs. That's one way we're trying to relieve the pressure on family size units. The other way that we're trying to encourage for more family size apartments is, for example, for the universal affordability preference proposal for the medium high density areas that encourage more affordable housing growth. So for affordable housing projects right now, like HPD has regulations for unit mixes. So for those types of affordable projects, they have to be different bedroom mixes. So they have to be like a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, et cetera. So that's another way to help facilitate the growth of family size apartments. So one way we're trying to relieve pressure on those so that folks who want to live alone can do so. Other way, encouraging for more affordable housing so that we can create more of those family size units.
So
We went out of order. It should have been public comment. There's 4 people here that signed up to comment about this. So
okay.
Then Kay. So guys, come up. Leo got. Yes, okay.
Thanks.
Then Dan Miller, Moniel Jabari, and Tyler Bowler. Yes, line up, please.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Leo. I'm a resident of this community board district. And I just wanted to express my support for the city of Yes for Housing Opportunity. In my view, it's a pretty modest proposal that will provide some badly needed housing in places across the city, including here. I think that it does so without drastically changing the look and feel of any neighborhood, while also doing something about the extremely low vacancy rates of the city, the extremely high rents in the city, and finding ways for more people to live the way they want to in like less crowded situations, in neighborhoods they want to live in, and in situations they want to live in without like parking nearby necessarily if they don't want it. And so, yeah, where there are places where I wish, if anything, it were, a proposal that went even further in some ways, but I think it's a badly needed first step that I hope we build on in the future. And as for what's there today, I fully support it.
Hi, my name is Dan Miller. I've lived in Queens for a couple of years now, but up until before that, I was living in Crown Heights, and I was a good example of what you guys were just discussing earlier. I was living with a roommate because I'm, resolutely middle class at best. And in New York, that means living with roommates. And I would have preferred, I was in my 30s. I would have preferred to live alone, but you try finding a studio for less than 2 Gs. It's nuts out there. So instead, me and a couple guy I knew from improv classes and some friends of his, I ended up taking up a 3-bedroom apartment that could have been rented to a family. And instead, we took it up, a bartender and a data analyst and a rotating cast of, semi ne'er-do-wells. We shouldn't have been in that apartment. We should have all been living in studios. And those studios have been illegal to build in this city for way too long. They've been restricted by things like parking requirements, by dwelling unit factors, by general forces of NIMBYism who just don't want to see new housing in their neighborhoods. And it's just wrong. And that's why I'm so excited for this proposal. And I'm really grateful to DCP for putting it together. And I hope that the board votes to support this because this city is amazing. It is a beautiful, wonderful place. And I'm so happy to live here, even though I had to live with roommates for a while. And I want more people to have the opportunity to live in this incredible place. Thank you so much. I love Queens. I'm glad I get to live here now. And I hope everyone else gets to too.
Hi, I'm Manoj Javeri. I'm a resident of Woodside. So for this community board, I'm one of those people in their 30s taking up a 3-bedroom apartment, and I have 2 roommates. And one day I'm going to buy a house, and when I get older, well, my parents are aging, and I want to be able to take care of them. And so I love the ability to like build an ADU or a granny flat and move them in, and so that I can keep an eye on them and help take care of them in their old age. And so I actually really think it's super important that like we pass this so that when I can keep my family together and keep them around and don't have to put them in an old folks home. It'd be really nice for me to do it, and that's why I'm so in favor of this proposal.
That's not my fault, right? Someone's phone? Oh, all right.
Hi, I'm Tyler Baldwin, and I've lived in Queens for about a year. When I lived in upstate New York for about 4 years, it was very easy to find an apartment and it was relatively affordable. When I moved to New York City a couple months ago, I found it to be very hard to find an apartment, especially for a single person around a budget for $2,000. By building more homes, even if it was single occupancy units or studios or 1-beds, it will allow me to live independently instead of roommates and being able to build a future in New York instead of having to move to Pennsylvania or even New Jersey.
All right. Back on Q&A schedule, 14 minutes on the clock, starting with Kenny. Finally.
Oh, I'm on. Okay, I think it's great that there's proposals that many of them seem really good in terms of increasing the housing stock. My concern, particularly as it applies to this district, is the proposals seem to essentially turn a blind eye to our infrastructure issues. And so the question there is, obviously, if particularly if we are one of the most dense neighborhoods already, and we're increasing that by 20%, even if it's affordable, which actually I agree with Tom that the AMI levels are just ridiculously too high. You're still burdening an already decrepit infrastructure all the more. And so the question is, how can we not decouple those issues, but instead, make sure that they are really part and parcel of going forward?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I don't think we're decoupling it at all. As part of this text amendment, we're doing a really comprehensive environmental review. We're releasing a document, and we have released a document called an environmental impact statement, or an EIS, and that's the most detailed, comprehensive environmental review city planning can do. And we've looked at infrastructure and looked at things like water and sewage and open space impact and transportation and schools. And we found for most of those categories, there's not really a significant impact because of how incremental of a population growth this text amendment will be. This is different from like a neighborhood study or neighborhood rezoning, where you see a really concentrated increase in density and an increase in population. This is really a broad, very dispersed amount of housing growth that will happen over the course of, for the environmental review, we looked at 15 years out. So that's a 15-year build period for what we'll look at for the number of like apartments and units that will be created because of housing opportunity. And for particularly for like the neighborhood that covers like LIC, for instance, we're seeing an incremental growth of about like 500 roughly units over 15 years. So that's like a very small amount of units over a very long time period. And because of that dispersed amount of population growth, we don't anticipate very dramatic increases to our current infrastructure needs. We think a lot of the units that will be built because of housing opportunity will house folks who already live here, who are already using the infrastructures we have. But in part of the IS, we're working with different capital agencies, as well as like DEP and MTA and DOT to make sure that we are addressing any issues that are happening, and we're also including mitigation strategies in the final EIS that we published.
For me, then,
Hey, related.
I can hear you.
How about now? Yeah, all right. He has a goal of about 100,000 units for this. I know you had some of the math going to the various impacts. It would be part of the IS. But would there be a forecast of impact by how many units you expect in terms of
Yeah, so as part of the environmental impact statement, we also include a range estimates for how many housing units, housing opportunity to help facilitate. And we do that by a geography called neighborhood tabulation areas, or NTAs. And those are pretty small. So a community board might have roughly like 2 or 3 NTAs in them. So you can actually look at the EIS, which is online, and we can share those resources with the board to send them around, but they're also on our website. And you can look at the NTAs that make up this community board and see what those range unit estimates are. So for what went into the calculations of like roughly how many, homes would be produced because of housing opportunity, we look at things like market strength, and we also look at general like capacity if a neighborhood has, space or room, additional floor area to build. So we look at those type of factors, and then that's roughly how we get these estimates for how many homes would be produced.
Thanks.
Thank you for wonderful getting the affordable housing. This is the main problem now in the New York City. 8.9 million people are really suffering for the HPD section, the Housing Connect. Everywhere I saw that there is a selling option, like 10 or 15% they reserve for the community people. Those are moderate income generous family. So my proposal is with this, because this is going to end up this year. So please add it 10% at least minimum selling option with this project, like ADU and UAP option. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I can pass it off to our HPD colleagues.
Hi, over here. Hi. So I grew up here in Sunnyside / Woodside my whole life. So I'm 32 years old. I've been here my whole life, and I've seen the neighborhood change a lot over the course of my life here. And so my first question is, right, and I envision myself growing up here, going old here, but I don't think I'll be able to do that with the way the prices of rent is. Like, I pay double of what my mom pays in a rent controlled apartment. And I know a lot of people, right? I'm very connected to the immigrant community here. And they are basically stuck in their apartments because once they leave, they move out, the rent is gonna double or triple from what they can afford. So I guess my question for you is, who is this housing for, right? Who are you building it for? Because it's not for the people that I grew up with, and then the people who live here right now. The people have been here for more than 10, 15 years, right? So who is this housing being built for? And how are you going to work with the people in the city who are responsible for managing greedy landlords and brokers' fees and things like that? Because those things are also ridiculous. Like, there's no reason why somebody should be paying $2,500 for a 1-bedroom apartment here in this community. And yeah, like when you guys are doing the whole chart with the affordable housing and the income and all of that stuff, like, there's a really big disconnect and a thoughtlessness of like who is a low income family, because a lot of these people are not making, echoing what Tom said, they're making, I know these people, they're working 3 jobs, right? They barely make $25,000 a year. So, and public housing, to get public housing is so hard. And I know this because I work with a lot of low income families. So, like, I'm in support of all of this, but like, who is this housing for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Very top of mind for us at city planning. And I think just to like highlight what the idea is here is that our high housing costs are a product of our housing shortage. We just don't have enough homes for folks, which is why landlords have so much power to charge whatever rents they want. They don't have any, real desire to address your maintenance issues because they know you can't leave because you can't afford anything else other than your current, apartment with like a leaky ceiling or something like that. And these are because we don't have enough housing options for New Yorkers today. And that's the real goal of this text amendment, is to create more housing options at a range of incomes, including folks at the lower ends. So for, again, universal affordability preference, which would create more affordable housing, not to belabor how like averaging works, but like that's the real hope, is that we can reach deeper affordability levels, because we can reach families that make 30% AMI or even less, because they'll be balanced out by households that make more than that, as long as it averages out to like 60% AMI. And it's just a better zoning tool than what we have today. For example, this is going to be replacing a zoning tool that most folks probably aren't very familiar with because it's a very limited geographic applicability, called voluntary inclusionary housing, which only really applies in areas that are R10s or have like inclusionary housing designated areas. It's a really small geography. So UAP applies to all R6 and R10s. Like, it's a wider geography, which means that we can produce more of that affordable housing, reaching that wider range of affordability levels in order to serve folks like your families and your loved ones who've been living in their homes for a long time and maybe want to like explore other options. And this is supposed to help create those other options.
Okay, I am now season control as under instruction. We have 3 more people. Number 1 is Osman, then Steve, then Lisa. I'm assuming that's the Lisa.
Hello. Hello. Okay. My question is, this affordable housing, this is a lottery. I'm seeing that this is not a lottery because this is selection. Because who wants to control the lottery? I see that the lottery who's the winner. I see the board members, 6, 7 people. They're going to take their way. Because every time I apply to qualify what's my income, then I see like my income 30,000, but when I see the lottery, the city official, somebody working city, he working like $40,000. When they sort of the paper, they say the higher income, we then pick them. I think because we need a fair the lottery, everybody can see the open lottery. That's gonna be affordable. Thank you.
Yeah, just to quickly comment on that, and totally understand the struggles of applying for the housing lottery. Like, I myself have never been successful. But just like there are community preference, as someone else mentioned earlier, for folks, if there's a building going up in your community board and you're a resident who lives here, you do have a slight preference over other folks applying. People who do work for the city, I think there's like a 5% preference. So there are slight advantages. Some folks who live in that particular neighborhood or who like work for the city do get in the lottery process, but they're just like, I think speaks to how there just aren't enough units available on the lottery. And that's why it's so competitive and difficult to get one. But I wish you luck to get one at some point.
We will, at some point, we're going to be voting on this, and it's a citywide proposal. We're going to be voting for, I hate to say it, but we have to be concerned with our community board and its effect here. And what people someplace else may feel is fine, we may have a problem with. Can you tell us, if this is passed citywide, exactly the effects of which neighborhoods and what changes will be made here before we vote? Because I'm sorry, but that's going to be our concern, our backyards.
Yes, definitely. For this presentation that Katie just did, it went through all of the proposals and the map showed roughly which areas are relevant. A lot of the low density proposals, so like town center and like transit oriented development, may not have the largest relevance for this particular area. There's some spots on those maps, and hopefully you have a chance to look at those maps later to see which areas are maybe you live near those that may be able to take advantage of those proposals. That's one. I think for a follow-up meeting that we're going to be having with the committee, we'll be going into a deeper dive 5 about like special district changes. So we'll have a conversation about that. But just in general, a lot of this proposal is tailored towards lower density or medium high density, but it's really a citywide focus. So it's not meant to be, pinpointing any particular neighborhood, because the idea is that housing growth should be spread out throughout the entire city, but definitely happy to have follow-up conversations.
Conceptually, that's fine, but we really have to see what's.
So.
Yeah.
On that, because my request was for the land use meeting that you expand those maps and to allow us to really look in detail at how that's going to affect our community district. Right? That's number one. You can do that. I mean, these slides are not sufficient for what we want to talk about. So for the land use committee meeting, Katie, I would request that you have better maps and that we can really go into depth there. My second question is really about ADUs. So you're in a 2-family house and you build an ADU. You have to get a new C of O and you become a 3-family, and then that makes you subject to multifamily rules about housing. Is that correct? Am I understanding you right?
So for a 2-family home that I wants to add an ADU, we would need complementary state legislation to make updates so that it would not trigger the requirements for a multiple dwelling.
How is that possible?
So as you're aware, if you hit 3 units, then you are considered a multiple dwelling. So this is something that we would need state action. And we are working really closely with our state partners to push for this so that we can actually allow for 2-family homes to add an ADU.
Subject to multiple dwelling rules. What's the problem with that?
So I'll just repeat your question for folks maybe on the Zoom, but why wouldn't we want 2-family homes adding an ADU to be subject to MDL or multiple dwelling law? So one of the reasons for that is because when you're considering a multiple dwelling, you have to like bring your building and add like sprinkling and things like that make it really expensive for folks who have a 2-family home to add an ADU. And so we want to make sure that 2-family homeowners have that option as well.
Oh, okay, all right. Camille, and then that's it. And then we have the committee meeting to ask way more questions. And then next month we have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there incentives for somebody in like a single family dwelling or a multiple family dwelling? Could there be unintended consequences? I know there's also pressure for people looking for starter homes, for example. I'm just curious if that has been explored. I'm curious if there are concerns about what could happen to like single family dwellings, to the homes that are considered starter homes in like Sunnyside, in, other parts of Queens. Are there incentives potentially for those to be bought up, for those to be, eliminated? What are some of the potential unintended consequences of this action?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to underscore, this is a zoning text change. So none of the underlying like zoning districts and then the zoning maps will change. So single family districts will remain single family districts. And the hope really here is that for the updates we're making for like low density districts is that it will help existing homeowners like better able to adapt their homes to meet their changing needs, whether that's like making it a little bit bigger with an enlargement or like adding an ADU to their home to accommodate like an elderly resident. So that's the focus on for what these zoning updates are. We can look at like the number of like units we're anticipating may be built in certain single family neighborhoods, but for like what it may do for incentivizing developers to buy those lots. That's a great question. I can get back to you on that, but that's for the main focus of the LD of the low density proposals is to really make it easier for existing homeowners to like stay in their homes and adapt their homes as they need.
Any closing thoughts? Any closing thoughts?
So I just want to remind everybody that we will be discussing this at the Land Use Committee. So you can either share questions, I guess, directly with me or with whoever you feel most comfortable with on the committee, and that will be discussed. I guess for committee members, if you could send me, obviously I have every question that was asked tonight, but any additional questions. I also have the list of questions from last Land Use Committee meeting. So anything else, please send those to me and I'll make sure that we are prepared to address them. Thank you.
We stop sharing. Thank you.
You know, I just want to add, in the year 2000, when I was living in a homeless shelter with my mom, we were able to leave and go to Section 8 housing. We had options. I don't know what, I've only heard that Section 8 has been gutted and, you know, it's, yeah, so options would be great. That's the key word for this for me, options. Speaking of options, a parking sign. That brings us to our public hearing. So now we're going to discuss, we're going to take a testimony about a request for a quality of life, no parking sign from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. on Center Boulevard between 50th Avenue and 40th Avenue. Starting with Yolanda Jimenez. And then Ken, Marlene, Stephanie, please line up. And you have 2 minutes.
Okay, great.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yolanda Jimenez, and I'm a longtime resident of Long Island City and a board member of the first co-op in Long Island City, City Lights, with over 1,000 residents. You know, for the last 3 years and a half, I've been working with the president of the Hunters Point Park Association, Rob Bash, to address a number of conditions that have developed due to the proliferation of food trucks who operate their business 24/7. This is the third time that we have shared our concerns with Community Board 2, and I want to thank the chair and the district manager for holding this hearing. But I also want to be clear that we're not opposed to food trucks or any small businesses that sell food along Center Boulevard, as long as they have their license and follow the rules. We are, however, very concerned that these vendors have shown a disregard for our community. Tonight, you will hear from residents and business owners about how this has adversely impacted all of us. First and foremost, it is our understanding from the police department that it's 1 or 2 food vendors who operate these food trucks and have decided to monopolize our parking spots along Center Boulevard between 50th and 48th Street. During the months when they're not operational, they have parked cars and dilapidated vans with stockpiles of food and supplies as placeholders for these trucks, preventing residents from parking in the area and visitors from parking in the area. We've had several meetings and walkthroughs with city agencies, including the New York City Police Department, the Department of Transportation, and the Health Department, and they all agree that something needs to be done. Enforcement by the NYPD is simply just not enough, as it does not address the underlying issue. We need to change in parking regulations so that everyone, including the food trucks, have an opportunity to park along Center Boulevard during the day. During our last walkthrough with the commissioner from the Department of Transportation, she suggested a quality of life, no parking sign from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. We are requesting the support of Community Board 2 and the local elected officials for this change. And at the very least, this will allow us to have some peace and quiet during the nighttime. Back in 2021, the community signed we had over 500 signatures from the community, also on change.org, seeking a solution to this issue. We realize there is no one perfect solution, but we think and, we respect the walkthrough from some of the city officials who have suggested a quality of life signage. So thank you. Rob? Oh, good questions. Yes.
This is something that we have looked at for years also. And when the apartment buildings were starting to be built, and we talked about parking, and they talked about the fact that residents would be able to park along that strip. You're now going to be permanently taking away the parking from residents. Now, I don't know, out of the 20,000 people who live in Long Island City, how many of them have cars and park on the street, but you're going to be taking away all the parking at night for everyone. And I understand that there's a problem. I just don't know that's the best solution. Were there any other solutions that were proposed?
Well, first of all, let's be very clear that currently we do not have access to parking along Center Boulevard because it's either the trucks who are there 24/7 or they're parked placeholder trucks. The police department knows this, transportation knows this, sanitation knows this. So what we're trying to do is to provide equity. We're not saying that the food trucks should not be there and should not operate, but at least we're giving everyone an opportunity to park during the day, because right now we cannot park. So you're absolutely right. There is a parking issue, and that is we can't park there. But we can't park there. Nor can visitors. That's correct. Rob?
Just fact, at the height, how many trucks are there?
At the height, we've seen anywhere from 20 to 25 trucks. And at times they do double park. Unfortunately, the 108 has not been very responsive. And then, I was a former deputy commissioner with the police department, and I've met with the commanding officer. And he says, well, there's no rules for me to enforce here. So we're trying to get some enforcement so that we can have, again, some sort of balance here. And that's what we're looking for as a community. We're just looking for balance. We're not looking to say you can't operate here. But if you are, let's follow the rules. Rob?
Hey, everyone. Hey, Lisa. So as Yolanda mentioned, probably three and a half years ago, we started to talk about this thing, and naive me thought maybe we could find some simple solution to mitigate the situation. And, unfortunately, here we are, and CB2 is doing a lot of important stuff. And I feel almost embarrassed that we have to bring this up, but we're doing this now. And, we do think this gives the food trucks 16 hours to vend there all the time that the parks are open. They can do their business. It would be great. But we also recognize there are other issues. And as like Steven said, so I actually think the parking thing would help parking in Long Island City, because right now with the metered parking after 8 o'clock, it's free. So a lot of cars park there, and then they have to move it by 7 or 8 a.m., depending on where they are. So the industrious people in Long Island City who want to get free parking, they can get up early, move their car over, and then park there at 7 a.m. and park there for the whole day. So I think in some ways it's going to really help parking. But also, we work closely with Gantry Plaza State Park, and their workers are there till 10 at night or so, and they work really hard taking away all the garbage. They try and leave the park looking pretty good by 9, 10 in the evening. They come back 7 in the morning after a busy night, and there's, garbage strewn everywhere, which of course brings rats and so forth. But, we want to be fair to everyone. I know people do like the food trucks, and this is great. People can sell then while the park is open. But we need some control. And just over the last 2 weeks, there's been one of the drug trucks that has been parked there in a standing zone it's basically 1 block from the Hunters Point High School and Middle School, also 1 block from Robert Wagner Elementary School. It's been there. It got away for a week. We did contact the 108. This evening when I left to come here, I saw the truck was there again, parking in the no standing zone, and it's busy. And I'm sure the truck is not legal, and being a block from the schools is not great either. So if we could put some kind of control in there, which allows the food vendors to do their thing, I think it's good for everyone. I think we'll have more parking, and hopefully it'll work. We'll see, but it's been going on for 3-4 years, and it's time for something. Okay.
Yes. Hi, Rob. Yes. So you've been to the Environment, Parks and Recreation Committee to request that the city close the gaps in the Greenway. And this proposal has been supported by my committee and the Transportation Committee. Given that the parking in question is likely where the Greenway would go, how do you basically, why are we having this protracted discussion about the parking?
That's a really good point. And actually, and this is going back maybe 2 years, we met with Nicole Garcia, and we talked about this. And at one point, we talked about putting in the large planters around there to take away some of the spots that would stop some of the trucks from being there. We even said at we take care of them, make sure they're going. And then he said, no, we're going to change it because the greenway is going to come through there, which we're 100% for. I mean, if there was going to be a greenway, they're great. I mean, that would change the situation potentially, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I mean, we've heard because of the pavers, the way Center Boulevard is, there's issues there. But if you know something more, we're all in favor of extending the bike lane all through there.
I mean, we received the RAISE grant for the Queens Waterfront Greenway, and public engagement is set to begin later this year. So,
I mean, can we do both? I mean,
yeah, and have space for vendors. Like, this doesn't have to be a zero-sum game per se.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know enough about that and how it could be there, but I'm all in favor of the bike lanes being extended for sure. And if there's still some way to do parking and, the same rules.
I mean, like,
Okay.
below,
Danielle.
yeah.
Hey, Daniel. Yeah.
So the cannabis truck, I'm assuming it's cannabis and not a.
I've got a
drug
picture
truck.
right here if you'd like to see
Okay,
it.
so that's illegal. Like I'm co-chair of city services. It's illegal. So what will a sign do to deter that? Because it's already illegal, like on its face.
You're right. I said the same thing. I mean, it's enforcement. You said make a request, through the 108. I don't have the answer, but I just think if there's a better acknowledgement of trucks and everyone knows what's going on, I would hope there'd be better enforcement along. But that truck was also there after 11 o'clock, at least one night when I saw it. So that would be even strictly.
Can I just send it? Can I can
Okay.
send you the. I just want to add to that. Again, it's sort of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? The commanding officer has said, there's no rules for us here to enforce. And so I called 311 when that truck was first there. We all do. It's just, this just keeps going, Yeah, so we're just trying to, mitigate this. Ken?
Okay. Oh, sorry, no, Camille had a question. So Camille and then Caroline. So Rob, you have.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't want to monopolize the time here. It's late, but.
Sure. Yeah, maybe a question for everybody, but I'm curious, what do you think the effect will be like in the morning? What happens at 7 a.m.? Or what happens to the trucks? Are they gonna, what are the potential like unintended consequences? Are they, do they have a lot to go to? Are they gonna park on the side streets and we're gonna be in the same spot? So.
Well,
I'm curious.
that's a good question. And I think, yes, the food truck people, because they've got their vans there that have been there. And I think, yeah, they may be lining up and getting there. Hopefully the 108, they'll be aware of the situation and can enforce whatever laws are there. But I don't know. We thought about, could there be alternate side of the street parking? Could there be a no standing zone? Could there be something across the street where the Wagner School is? They did get a no parking zone there during school hours. So if there's a better suggestion, we were trying to work something out, but I just think it's, it's not great, particularly the city lights people at 3 a.m. when on a hot summer night, when there's a party going on in front of the park because everyone's sitting around eating, noise and so forth. So you have a good point. Yeah.
Situation where they're fighting for a spot.
Yeah.
But I don't know, but I'm curious if you've spoken to them and if they have a,
Have I spoken to the food truck?
yeah, like
No.
what they do.
We have not. I've asked actually a couple of times when I've seen garbage and their broken down van. In fact, I will say we were here last month. The day after the meeting, one of the vans that had been there literally probably since after July 4th that had the broken windows and 2 inches of snow on the seat when it snowed was actually towed. So we did see something, good coming out of that meeting, that they probably heard something, but I don't know, but it's just, we want the food vendors to do what they want. We want to be clean, safe, and, this is the best opportunity that DOT recommended, the best way to go. So anyway, okay. Thank you.
Hi, hello, everybody. My name is Kenneth Bandler. I'm a native New Yorker, and I've lived in Long Island City for 5 years near Gantry Plaza State Park in the river. New York neighborhoods thrive on a sense of community that is evident among us residents, restaurants, shops, and other businesses that operate along Center Boulevard and side streets. And that sense of community is founded on abiding by rules. A blatant exception are the mobile food vendors who willfully ignore basic clear traffic regulations. The fact that LIC has limited parking is well known, but where is it written that food vendors have a privilege to seize all the spaces on Center Boulevard between 48th and 50th Avenues year-round, ensuring that none of us residents can utilize any of those spaces, any of those precious parking spaces? They hold those spaces throughout the year, even in seasons when most food trucks are not operating, by inserting other vehicles as space holders. With warmer weather upon us, a couple of the food trucks already are staying in place 24 hours a day in violation of health department rules. And we know that more will join them in the weeks ahead, and some will stay open into the wee hours, if not overnight. Further, several food trucks regularly park next to fire hydrants, in crosswalks, at no standing and no parking signs, or they sell their wares while double parked on Center Boulevard. They daily violate traffic regulations for which I or any member of this community board would receive a costly ticket. Why does the 108 ignore this and give a pass to the food trucks that do not abide by clear rules? Moreover, many of the food trucks owners do not move their vehicles when temporary no parking signs are posted to enable TV and film production companies to situate equipment near their filming sites. Preventing Hunter's Point South residents from utilizing any of these spaces is not right, it's not fair. One sound idea is to have DOT put signs that state clearly parking is prohibited between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily. Adding these signs will do a lot for the quality of life along Center Boulevard by compelling the food trucks and associated vehicles to leave the area overnight while allowing them to operate until the park closes at 10 p.m. I urge CB2 and elected officials to support this reasonable request. Thank you very much.
Marlene? Thank you.
Hi, again, I'm Marlene Dodds. I'm also a member of the Board of City Lights and have lived in the community for 26 years. I've witnessed many wonderful changes to our very diverse community, including a senior citizen residence. I'm here to address the impact of the many food trucks on Center Boulevard, as others before me have. I would like to focus on the need for signage to curtail the hours of operation, not destroy businesses, but we'd also like to make sure that these businesses that are there are complying with the laws as well. They're supposed to be going to the commissary to be cleaned and to be not leaving their garbage on the sidewalks and around there, so that we've gotten lots of rats in the area as a result of that. We are a residential community and value quiet at a reasonable hour. Gantry State Park closes at 10 p.m. And therefore, we request that the trucks have cleaned up around their space and are gone by that hour as well. This action allows the trucks approved by the health department to make a living. On the books for public vendors, these hours, the hours for vendors are much more limited than this. Many of the trucks have blazing LED lights, which is like going on until 3, 4 in the morning. The trucks run their generators all day and all night, which adds pollution, puts a strain on the air, and creates light pollution in this residential community. It also attracts many people that might not otherwise stay. The lights act as a beacon for cars, bikes, and people looking to gather at night, often blasting music, revving engines, double parking, and meeting up in the park past closure and doing all kinds of other things, including the fireworks that go off at 3 in the morning. It's often well beyond 10 p.m. and mostly until 2 or 3 in the morning that the food trucks are still operating. We believe a first step to effect some change is signage on Center Boulevard, which prohibits the parking from 10 to 7 a.m. Streets can also get a good cleaning, since Too often, the food trucks do not allow the cleaning as things stand now. We realize that this mostly occurs in the summer months, but that seems to have expanded time-wise with climate change, April to November. Thank you for your time, and I hope you can help us solve this problem. Thanks.
Hey all, hey Queens, good afternoon. I'm here to speak on behalf of American Brass Restaurant. As a business, we have operating on Center Boulevard since 2020. Like so many businesses, we're severely impacted by our shutdown and restrictions during the pandemic. Unfortunately, we have been impacted during the, growing numbers of food trucks park along the park through Center Boulevard in front of our restaurant and totally disregard any rule and regulations. American Brass faces Manhattan with a beautiful view of 1,500 square feet patio spanning the curb of the boulevard. This year along, we will be paying 20,000 in city and taxes to license this footprint. No other business holds so much real estate with such an impact from these food trucks. Every morning, our patio is riddled with plastic cups, to-go containers, cans, and food scraps. While serving our customers in the patio, takeout motorbikes lineups on the street, the truck generators emit a constant clamor and smoke, and the bright lights create an unwelcoming environment for our patrons. Cars constantly double park in front of the food trucks to place their orders, creating traffic jam, causing cars to blow their horns so they can get by. While the park across from the restaurant closes at 10 p.m., many of the food trucks stay open past midnight, attracting an unsafe environment, keeping people up at the park, drag racing, public drinking, creating an overall unruly place. We all know when the summer comes, 100 Points definitely gets overpacked, overwhelmed with trucks contributed to the affliction. I live and work in the neighborhood, like so many other residents, feeling that something needs to be done. At least implementing park regulations will limit times for food trucks can operate. As a business, we have to follow many rules and regulations imposed by the health department to ensure food safety to our patrons. Is the health department inspecting these food vendors? I understand that the food vendors have their trucks, they have to go to a commissary, which is true. At least once a day. Clearly, this is not happening when the trucks are allowed to park and operate 24/7. The disturbance is appalling and unending, and American Brass deserves a peaceful environment, and so do the residents. So, thank you.
Good evening. I'm a 24-year resident of Hunters Point and would like to testify in favor of a quality for life, no parking sign on Center Boulevard between 48th Avenue and 50th Avenue between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. On these two residential blocks, you'll find 973 apartment units, both market rate and low-income senior housing, a restaurant, and a public pre-K school whose playground is steps away from Center Boulevard, where food trucks operate 24/7. New York City rules for mobile food vending require that food trucks at least once a day go to an off-site facility to clean their trucks and dispose of all solid and liquid waste, including cooking oil. Food trucks are also responsible for consumer litter. Unfortunately, these rules are not enforced, and vendors illegally dispose of waste in public litter baskets and on the street. And since many of these trucks operate 24/7, the trucks are not properly cleaned. With food trucks operating all night, the neighborhood awakens to find trash bins overflowing in the sidewalks and streets, littered with plastic, broken glass, cooking oil, and food waste. Not only is this unsanitary, but it also exasperates rat activity on these two blocks, an issue that is clearly documented on the New York City rat map. Limited overnight parking would make it possible to properly clean and remove trash from the street and sidewalks and mitigate the rat problem along these densely populated blocks. I, along with other neighbors, urge this Community Board 2 and our elected officials to support this request. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fran Semino. I've been in Long Island City since 2006.
and I want to speak to the environmental impact that these food trucks have on our community. The trucks arrived shortly after COVID. It made sense because no one could go into a restaurant to buy anything, but they have been there nonstop and open almost 24 hours a day, monopolizing everyone's parking spaces. At times, it almost seems like a carnival, except even the carnival closes at night. These trucks are constantly running, adding to noise and air pollution in the neighborhood. They're supposed to carry a maximum of 2 propane tanks in each truck. Last year, the fire department found several of these trucks carrying 4 tanks in their trucks. Propane is extremely flammable, putting the waterfront and all the trucks on the waterfront in danger of explosion. Also, the film and television companies have used the waterfront as a backdrop for many of their productions. There are permits issued by the city requiring cars and trucks to move from these areas so the mobile units can park their trucks and producers can use the area for their projects. This is a big source of income for the city, and they're in danger of losing because these trucks and/or their placeholder trucks, cars, refuse to move. There is a total disregard for rules. On a personal note, my husband and I take a walk every night after dinner. Last week, we saw not 1, but 2 rather large rats running across the walkway from the trucks into the park, right where these trucks are situated. I'm not asking for no trucks, just asking to regulate the hours so we can have peace, quiet, and the streets can possibly be cleaned by the Department of Sanitation so we can begin each day fresh. There has to be a balanced approach, and our request for no parking from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. on these 2 blocks seems like the most reasonable and equitable solution to this ongoing issue. I am asking CB2 and our elected officials to support this request. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
So how many people are feeling tired here? Anyone wish they got a better night's sleep last night? My name is Stacy Chen. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and have been living at City Lights since 2011. Over time, I've witnessed much change in the area, and actually hearing a fellow friend speak about the neighborhood just made me feel sad today. I've seen change in the neighborhood, such as an increase in rats. I won't go into the park at night anymore. Constant presence of food trucks and an increase in noise pollution that affects people's sleep. The food trucks themselves create noise and encourage late night activity. Issues in our area have included loud music and speech, scooters, fireworks, and cars racing along Center Boulevard. On the website for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, there's a section titled, "What is Noise Pollution?" And it states that studies have shown that there's a direct link between noise and health. Problems related to noise include stress-related illnesses, high blood pressure, speech interference, hearing loss, sleep disruption, and lost productivity. As a mental health therapist, I'm most familiar with the impact of sleep on mental health, and I'm sure many of you actually can relate firsthand. Sleep issues are often associated with depression and anxiety, and I'm also aware of the mind-body connection where our mental and physical health influence one another. Sleep is foundational for our well-being. Consider the last time you had trouble sleeping and how it affected you. Sleep is simply irreplaceable. On a personal note, I know that I need sufficient sleep to be able to fully function the next day. My sleep has certainly been affected by noise pollution in our community, especially during the summer months that will soon be upon us. In order to do my job as a mental health professional well, I will need quality sleep at night. This will not only affect me, but the communities I serve. I'm asking, along with my neighbors, for you to approve this request for no parking on Center Boulevard. You'll be helping to reduce noise pollution in our community and support mental health. Thanks for your consideration.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vicky Papaduca, and I've lived also in City Lights for about 15 years now. And I support this proposal to limit the hours of the operation of the food trucks. However, that's done. And I agree with all the reasons everybody else talked about. And for me, the important reasons are light pollution. The food trucks are decorated with bright, colorful LED lights. Some of them are animated to attract customers. The lights disrupt the night environment and the perception of solitude and naturalness, to quote the National Park Service in reference to light pollution. Surely my neighbors on lower floors are experiencing this light onslaught much more directly. I think probably you are. Noise pollution, trucks are noisy with generators that are continually running, which are more audible at night. Much more importantly, though, they create a pole of attraction for people and late at night contribute to increasing traffic, including noisy motorcycles and rowdy behavior. In the last couple of years, we've had people using fireworks in the middle of the night at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and waking everybody else kind of like in terror. Obviously, the trucks are not responsible for this behavior, but by being open late at night, they attract mostly young people, often in the mood for partying, and they forget that there are residents in the neighborhood who are only feet away, trying to get some sleep. So I would like to see the 24-hour street fair environment on Center Boulevard return to a quiet and discreetly lit residential area after 10 o'clock at night. I think the no parking from 10 to 7 will provide the community with some relief while also allowing the mobile food vendors to operate during the times that the park is open. I hope that the members of the board and the local officials will support this proposal, and which is, I think, very reasonable. Thank you.
Laura?
Hi, good evening. My name is Laura Myers. I'm a resident of Long Island City since 2015. I'm a beneficiary of the housing lottery. I moved from Sunnyside, where I'd been living in Western Queens since 2004. I am humbled to be before you and also to join my colleagues from my neighborhood. I just noticed this posting for the board meeting on my local pharmacy, and I showed up. So I am not as informed, but I am equally stressed and sleep deprived by the light pollution and the sound pollution by the food trucks. However, I don't know if this parking proposal is going to result in the solution that we all want. And I'm concerned because we currently have regulations that are not enforced. Because I, like you, am calling 311 for trucks that are in no standing zones. And as Ms. Gray pointed out, what is going to happen at 7 a.m.? It's not going to start happening at 7 a.m. because the businesses have a deep incentive to get there much earlier to secure these spots. And so right now, the food trucks sometimes wind down by midnight or 1 a.m. if I'm lucky, and it's not summer. But at 5, 4 a.m., 6 a.m., I don't know at what time they're going to arrive to occupy the spots. So I'm wondering if it's possible to consider metered parking on the west side of Center Boulevard, as we have it on the east side. I own a car. I can't afford a parking spot in a garage. I'm also out there. I just don't know if this is going to result in more parking spots for local residents and if there will be enforcement so that, currently there's a lot of violation of all the things we're talking about. They're parked longer than 7 days. They don't go back to the commissary. They're in violation of health department rules. Is there a way we can get that enforced and that will solve some of the problems in the neighborhood? That would be my hope, and I'm happy to be involved with my local peers. So thank you so much.
Two more, I think, Chris Demon. Yep. You want to stay there?
I'll just stay here. This is fine. I don't need to do the Judge Judy thing. I'm someone who just lives right off of Center Boulevard, and I'm concerned about the decline of the quality of life and what the food trucks have brought to the community. I've only lived there for 5 years. I do live in affordable housing, and I do not sleep because of these guys. I will say there's a logistical element. The park closes at 10. Well, it doesn't now. And the trucks are parked, directly on the edge of the trucks are parked on the edge of the park, and they still stay well into the morning. So really, the park never really closes. And it brings the revelers and the partiers, et cetera. And it leads to, by 2:33, they've got their drunk food and fights break out. It's a real party, and it's fun for a little while. It was fun in 2020, and now it's getting old. Most congregate directly in front of the trucks. They yell, they play, they fight. And to wake up the next morning, the worst is our parks workers work so hard. City parks, state parks, they work so hard at making our park so clean. And it's just destroyed in the morning. And we're walking over broken glass, and most of us have dogs and or kids. And it's a rough sight. And so then we start all over. So if we could wrap it up at 10 p.m. when it's supposed to be closed, it would be so much better for everyone. I'd like to also note that in my casual conversations with the 108, I've asked about the people that they've stopped and detained for disorderly conduct, not the food truck drivers, the people coming to party. Most of them, if not all of them, do not reside in this community. They do not reside in Queens. Many of them do not reside in New York City. But they're coming to the waterfront because they know they can. Why wouldn't they? I would too, I guess. Then there's the trucks and the operators, and I've witnessed beyond the disregard for the trash left by them and their customers, a severe disregard for the park and the street and the residents. I've watched wastewater, grease, and used oil being dumped into the street. And thank you, and I'll wrap it up by just saying one person owns 12 of these, and I've had a conversation with him, and it didn't go well. He's not a nice guy. So thank you. Who's next?
Lisa first. Sorry. Oh, this Lisa.
Lisa. I think one of the biggest problems is that one person owns 12 of the trucks. So I think that that's who we need to get at, the one person. The park always closed at 10. We always stayed way past 10, including myself. I still go out there 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Sorry?
Right there.
I live right there. I'm sorry. I live right there in Hunters Point, whichever one that is. And I've always been there and always been outside, well past. My friends and we are the music people in Long Island City. We are the people who started the Music and Culture Lab. We have always been there. But I think what the answer to this is to go after that one person that owns the 12 trucks.
That's great. Next time, it's gonna be a question to the person.
Okay.
Time for discussion. Danielle.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I live in Long Island City, but I don't live on Hunters Point. And my question is, because I sort of heard you say that there are people who are coming to the park, the public park, that aren't from the area. Like I go to that park because it's the closest one to my house in an area that does not have enough green space. So is the idea that is what you want is for people who don't live immediately adjacent to Hunters Park to not come, because that's really concerning to me because it is a public park for all of us.
Let's not interrogate our case, but great point. Lastly, Mohammed Atia. Sorry, any more questions for Chris? No? Okay, right. Our last speaker.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is, let's take it off. That's easier. All right. Good evening. My name is Mohammed Atiyah. I'm the managing director of the CB2 project. I used to live in Long Island City. Thank you. But I got priced out. So now I'm in South Brooklyn. I'm like 3 hours away from you. And I'm just here to briefly talk about the issue. I do hear the concerns. A lot of them can be fixed only if we are able to address the issues by talking to the people who are in charge And if those people, the vendors, the owners, the operators are not listening, there should be some sort of educational mechanisms and enforcement mechanisms. The only problem with the DOT proposal that a lot of community members are supporting is that I personally don't believe it's gonna help. It might only make it a little bit more difficult for these food trucks to get there and occupy the spot 24/7. But as a lot of people have mentioned, if it's illegal to park before 7 a.m., people will show up at 5 a.m. and they will line up even double parking. It's all about the enforcement. It is very difficult. And I know a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people have no idea about the vending laws, and I do not blame them. I've been doing this for 15 years now. I know the vending laws very well. They are super complicated. That's why you have one person owning 12 food trucks. That's why you have people parking and double parking and risking their vehicles to be towed away from an illegal parking spot and piling up all these fines, because finding a legal vending location is a very difficult thing. I can spend 30 minutes just explaining what it means to find a legal vending location. And then when you went to the police department, they said there is nothing for us to enforce. So it sounds like these food trucks are following the rules and regulations. There are some rules they are breaking, like being there 24 hours. I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying based on what you're sharing, the health department should enforce that. The health department should enforce that. But if you make 2 blocks, no parking sign, they're gonna move to the next block. And then in 6 months, you're gonna come back and you say, let's make it no standing. And then they're gonna go to the next block, go across the street, go to a different neighborhood. You are running in a circle that will be endless. You will waste so much resources without really having the conversations with the vendors and address the problem right on. There is a lot to talk about with the vending systems. I'm just here to voice my comment about this particular issue because I found it to be very difficult. I have seen it in my neighborhood. I live in Bensonhurst and few blocks away in Diker Heights. The residents got the local council member to pass a legislation to ban vending in the whole area. And the vendors got around it and they were working in a legal way. I'm really sorry for taking so much time, but I want to pause here. Question? Yes.
Sorry? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been time. All right, me, Roz, and then Maury. What resources do the vendors have to be better neighbors and to, meet folks halfway?
Great question. As of now, there is no city agency that does any sort of education or outreach to the street vendors community. The only entity in the whole New York City that does that is the Street Vendor Project, the organization I work for. We are 10 staff members, 3 of us are part-time, and we are asked by so many council members, 51 of them, to go in their districts and address that and educate the vendors. Of course, we need more resources, but we are not the answer. SBS, the Small Business Services, should create an educational arm for the street vendors community to go out, educate the vendors, make sure they understand the rules, and with enough education, enforcement should be in place.
Hello, excuse me. Okay, yeah, I would like to know, I gather part of what you suggest is to increase the education of the vendors. And I would, by extension, I think really some real communication with the community, friendly communication, constructive communication. But what else might you suggest if, should we be, would you like us to be rejecting this whole idea of having maybe even metered parking or somehow, I think the idea of people just leaving cars forever on the west side of Center Boulevard doesn't serve anybody's purpose. And so that might be addressed differently. But what would you suggest?
I don't have the specific answer to that particular problem, but I'll be honest with you. I know that a lot of rules in New York City are not enforced, like jaywalking, like double parking, right? We all know. So getting the city to do its job, and if there is someone who's taking advantage of the public space and parking a vehicle more than 7 days, I know that there is an app on 311 that I can file a complaint and get the car towed. If the city is doing its job or not, that's another problem. That's not my problem or yours. That's the government's problem.
I would like to say the enforcement, for instance, of that no parking for more than 7 days and so on. I mean, it seems like a nightmare. with it, but no standing is not a nightmare. No standing for certain hours overnight is very plain and clear. And I sort of would urge people to consider that for that reason.
But what I heard from more than 10 people who spoke is that these food trucks are breaking the parking rules already. They are already double parking. So this sign will just give the cops an extra ticket to give the vendors. But it looks like the vendors will insist to break the law. So we need to figure out a mechanism to ensure that people are complying with the law and understanding why they should not be there, if that makes sense.
I appreciate so much of what you said. And I will tell you, I'm not sure some of what you've said will actually solve the problem either. For example, where I live for 6 years, we've had an issue with one independent vendor, and people have spoken to her, had conversations with her. There have been attempts at enforcement. Never been able to address it. Open flame, barbecue grill, danger, taking up 3/4 of the sidewalk, disabled people can't get by, triggers people's asthma. I would love for you to come out and maybe even visit because there's been nothing that's been able to correct it. So I really sympathize with the folks that have come today because they're at their wits' end. And as you've said, there isn't a mechanism in the city right now to address this. And you're the only group that's educating folks, and it's still not helping. So they have to do something, and we as a board have to do something to respond. We can't just do nothing and let them suffer even longer. So again, what would you suggest? Because I've been dealing with this for 6 years in my building.
I totally hear you on that. And for that example you said in particular, I'm like 95% sure that person doesn't have a permit if they are taking like 3/4 of the sidewalk and have open flames. But that's a bigger conversation that I would love to present to you all on. If you can have another whole meeting about, in particular, like street vending. I would love to. Thank you. Sorry, any more questions?
We're gonna cut off questions here, so sorry, we gotta move on. But I did promise Chris can respond to that comment and then 30 seconds, very close.
Yeah,
Very close.
totally. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to respond about the people coming from the parks. It's at 2:30 a.m. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like during the day. Everyone's welcome to our park. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful park. Yeah. Yeah, but at 3 a.m. it's closed. And so, I understand. You keep on questioning that. I don't get it. Yeah, it's our park. Last thing I'll say, sorry, I had a conversation with this owner. I just want to bring that up. It did not go well. And he is not receptive to education and talking. He is not receptive to that. I've had that conversation. And in fact, I had to call the police just to let you all know.
Noted. All right, thank you. That is the conclusion of the hearing. There's more to discuss and we have 45 minutes, so. Oh, sorry, what was your name? Okay, you're entitled.
Hello, my name is Mark Brandis. As it happens, today is the 26th anniversary of my moving into Long Island City. I live in City Lights, thank you. And I'm here to voice my objection to the placement of quality of life, no parking signs from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. on Center Boulevard. I do agree that the food trucks that line up along Center Boulevard create quality of life issues with regard to noise, crash, and all the other issues that have been discussed this evening. However, there's another quality of life issue that the proposed solution would make worse. Many neighborhood residents regularly utilize street parking for their cars. Parking space on the street is a vanishing resource in part due to construction, bicycle racks, and more no parking zones. The measure that was previously put in place to deal with the food trucks, that is the expansion of the no standing during school hours signs on Center Boulevard near PS 78, has not had a significant impact on the food trucks because school is not in session during the summer months. Yet because the no standing goes into effect at say 7 a.m., it means that neighborhood residents who drive to and from work must either find other parking or leave by 7 a.m. The great majority of workers don't leave before 7 a.m. to go to work. Placement of the proposed no parking signs by the park would only increase this problem. The quality of life issues that the community is trying to address exist predominantly during the warm weather months when more people use Gantry Plaza Park. Demand for on-street parking also increases at the same time for the same reason. By way of contrast, my father lives on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It is often easier to find on-street parking near his apartment after work than it is near my apartment in Long Island City. Assuming proper enforcement, which is a big if, the remedy being considered might mitigate an issue that is problematic only for part of the year at the cost of exacerbating a problem that exists year-round.
Thank you. Thank you. Quick question. How did you find out about this meeting? I'm concerned whether everybody in Long Island City knew about it.
The meeting was advertised on website through the city lights. So all city light
The
residents.
only notification you got?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then a bunch of us went and gave out flyers ourselves. Then last week. Yeah. Yep.
To the entire area. Hi, just to reiterate, we did a huge mailing, cost us a lot of money in postage. We sent out quite a bit at all the surrounding area, apartment buildings, houses, businesses. Some letters came back to us, as some do. So we have the proof as well of that. But we did a huge mailing, and then a board member came up and went out and did huge flyering. As you heard, someone else said they found it in a pharmacy, so they did post it in some places.
All right, we have 45 minutes. Let's speed through all the reports and get to this vote and then get out of here. Ryan, congratulations on becoming a dad.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it's great to be back. Yeah, after a couple of months off. Thank you, Chair. All right, attendance. And for any of the new board members who are not quite so new now, but it's my first time taking attendance while you've been here, please feel free to correct me about pronunciation or anything about how I read off your name as we go through this. Amparo Abelbay, Nelly Afshar, Anatol Ashraf, John Bahia, absent, Emery Baranowski, Carisha Batan, Nicholas Berkowitz. Here. Cap Bloomfield excused. Danielle Brecker. Carlos Castro-Croak. Lisa Charles. Tanya Chavez. Osman Chowdhury. Stephen Cooper. Here. Warren Davis. Lisa Deller. Maury Gallinoy. Somnath Gamir. Dr. Raz Janutsov. Alexandra Gonzalez. Camille Gray. Kenny Greenberg. Mohammed Hossein. Christine Hunter. Leland Kendall. Badrun Khan excused, correct? Yep. Diana Kitchler. James Kim. Pramit Kumar. Chimang Lama. Sheila Lewandowski, excused. Yep. Benjamin Lucas. And Patrick Martinez. Tom Titsas. Eric Narberg. Andy Olivares. Zishan Ott. Riley Owens. Jolly Patel. Amaya Saab. Absent. Thanks. Noberto Saldana. Laura Shepard. Ryan Smith, present. Caroline Spitzer. Lauren Springer. Michaela Thomas.
Good evening, I'm here.
Mary Torres, excused? Yep. Mai Tran. Yep. Letitia Vasquez. Michael Zurab. Great. We have a quorum. Yeah, thanks. So says Debbie.
Awesome. Thanks for making quorum on a beautiful, almost summer night. I will go through my chair's report quickly. New members, you should have received your committee assignments already. And if you haven't, I will follow up this week. Also by Monday, people should be receiving their check-in survey that I promised. Just, sorry for the delay. I'm announcing it. Tech committee is working on the policies doc, digital policies doc. Just so you know, this is more board, board administrative business, but I feel like people are interested in that. And I forgot, well, Sheila is the bylaws guru, but I would like to create a bylaws working group looking at the bylaws every year. It's not the Constitution. We should be amending it every year or so. So yeah, if you want to get involved that way, do let me know. And yeah, that is it. Debbie.
Good evening, everybody. I will try to be quick and only do the highlights. EEO policy for all new board members. At the end of the meeting tonight, please see Mary Ann, sign it, give it back to us. And if you haven't done so, we like to pride ourselves on 100% compliance. So we have to be compliant with the city of New York. We attended Borough President's swearing in, and I think that was a great night. Great day. Congratulations again to the new board members. I saw Roz there as well, so. Vice President, Vice Chair. Remember, if you have community complaints, streetlights, potholes, enforcement issues, and all the things that we're talking about, please make sure you send it to the board office. We will follow up. I have a cabinet meeting with agencies every month, and we bring up all the issues and we send them to the agencies, and we do our best to get responses. It's not easy, but we do our best. I just want to let you know that we have 2 dining out applications on behalf of the City Service Committee, which will be vetted at City Services on May 8th. Silo, our chair, Steve, wanted me to mention it, 5-51 47th Avenue, and Tavern Corp. located at 2721 Jackson. Go out, take a look at what they're trying to do. So when you come to the meeting, you'll understand what it's about. And let me know. And I'll share it with Steve and Danielle. We had 21 complaints for the month of April. Our top complaints were, again, some of these complaints are multiple, so we have like double that amount, but I only report the complaint. Department of Transportation was the top complaint, signage, singles, and potholes. Department of Sanitation, which is now doing some of that vendor enforcement, working on your issues. So I just want you to know at my last cabinet meeting, that was mentioned. So we gave it to Department of Sanitation. We're going to see what happens. And PD complaints. Now for the happier news, the important news. Shankee Square Park. Most of the construction is completed. We've gotten several calls on why it's delayed. It's due to Con Ed having to go out there and do some kind of certification so DOT can finish their portion. So that's why it's in a holding pattern, and we're working on trying to help them do that. So once they get that Con Edison certification, they'll be able to go to their next steps and hopefully open that park. Noonan Dog Run is now open. Good news for Blissville. The flagpole is scheduled to begin fall 2024. We're pushing. I told you last month I would get you that update. I promised last month I'd get you that update. Woodside Memorial will be getting the bulletin boards, Carisha. They are rehabbing 2 And they told me that they will do that at the end. So there's 2 in rehab. And they're working on some new ones with the signage company, but they're not sure yet where and when, but they are on top of our issue. So I wanted to report on that. Vigilio Playground will have a Kids in Motion staffer. So, and that's to help with kids' events and things like that. So I wanted to do that. DDC project, wrapping up a trench restoration on 70th Street, south of the BQE. We have a water main installation project at 29th Street between 47th Avenue and Hunters Point. So just so you know, that's what's going on there if you're questioning or looking at it. I do humbly want to thank Sunnyside Shines, Sunnyside Community Services, as this week I was honored by them for Women's History in the name of Lily Gavin. I just want to say, Lily was iconic in this community. She was a staple of Sunnyside. She cared about all of the constituents. She cared about the businesses. She cared about everyone. She'd bring them in a room and she'd say, how can we fix it? She'd say, come to Daisy's. Let's talk about it. And she never let anything waver. And Marianne and I, the community put out a tree in Saba Park for Lily. It's a little, now it's a growing tree because the tree died and the community bought that tree. And we fought with parks for a few years as well to replace that tree because it died. And I'm happy to say they replaced it and they said it's under warranty. So we're keeping an eye on it and it's growing and flourishing. So in honor of Lily Gavin and the entire community, I thank you and I'm honored and humbled. So thank you.
Well deserved. We did forget to approve the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes with the friendly amendment of marking Lisa Charles present virtual, right? Yeah. Anyone opposed? I made the motion. Nick seconded. Nick. And anyone opposed? Great. All right, let's move on to Katie. Oh, any abstentions? Oh, Ryan, he wasn't here. Right. And if we could please leave questions for Katie to a minimum today, because let's get out of here.
All right, so I don't actually have any other updates, but I do. I just want to read off the website where more information can be found and the email for you to submit questions, just so we're all on the same page. So the website is nyc.gov/yes housing opportunity. The email is housingopportunity@planning.nyc.gov, and that'll go directly to the housing experts, our housing team, and they can answer your questions. And if you guys have other questions, I can take those now as well. All right, thank you guys. Good night.
Okay, and now our vote, which, if you don't mind, Riley, I'm gonna present it, if that's okay. So the Center Boulevard issue, we've heard from our neighbors, and I thank everyone for coming and speaking passionately. The City Lights building, they're one of the first in line communities when it comes to issues about Gantry Park. But in all honesty, I feel like the City Lights building is one building we've heard from. And of course, we're going to decide. Just let you know, a bunch of us took flyers and reached out to the vendors. Eric, what was it, like last Thursday, right? I think we started to reach out to them. Last Saturday, right? Yeah, so not even a full 7 days. So, and then many of them didn't know this was happening. Some of them didn't know that was coming. And I feel like, and many of them are good actors, like, the City Lights friends have said. And, they're hardworking people. Personally, I feel like they come from immigrant communities. I'm the first Bangladeshi
community board chair in New York City history, I gotta point out, there's a couple of Bangladeshi food truck owners over there as well. So, I have to represent them as well. They told us overwhelmingly in person that they want to work, and after hours, they do provide garbage cans, and they're the only places where you can find food for under $20 along there. And in the summer months, they make them, you could make your money for the day between 10 and 12 o'clock. So in order to save some time, I would like to make a motion right now, and then, I would like to have it seconded, and then we can discuss and move on. But I would like to make a motion to ask for no parking sign between the hours of 12 and 7 a.m. Just give them the extra 2 hours to make their money for the day and get out. Do I have a? No standing between 12 and 7 a.m. That is the motion. Okay. Discussion, Amparo. Discussion. Discussion, starting with Tom. I owe him a question.
Oh, thank you. The second to last speaker suggested that there should be some type of kumbaya between the residents and the vendor trucks. You suggested, I believe, Anatole Chair, that you spoke to the vendors. So my question is, where are they tonight? Why are they not here tonight? If the third to last speaker suggested to have this sit down, where are they tonight?
A lot of them passed the message on. A lot of them said they passed the message on to the people who own the trucks and asked the owners to come because they're out there.
Where are the owners? Thank you.
Yeah.
I belabor my point. Thank you.
Who hasn't gone? Zishan. Wait, sorry, wait for the mic.
I want to thank my neighbors who were here tonight. I heard a lot of things I disagree with, but my folks are leaving. I believe community board work best when the mindset.
Screen.
Yeah.
All right.
Better? Great. So I believe community boards work best when there's a wide set of participation, and I appreciate the folks who made the time to be here tonight. This is my third summer living in Hunters Point South Commons. Turns out I have a couple neighbors here. That's awesome. It's the building with the CVS for folks who are familiar. It's one of the few, very few fully affordable buildings. So all residents need to meet either lower middle income qualification requirements. I consider myself super lucky to be able to call this my home. I live on the 5th floor, and my bedroom, living room, and terrace all face the waterfront. I essentially live on Center Boulevard. I work from home. I have a dog. So I am basically on Center Boulevard like 90% of my waking hours and all of the sleeping ones too. I got to say that's what a lot of what I heard tonight is not really my experience as a resident there. I will say one of the coolest parts of this park is getting to experience how global of a user base it has. I regularly hear Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, English, Bengali, Urdu, Yiddish, Ukrainian, Arabic. And one of the other cool aspects is getting to see how different communities use the park and adjacent spaces in different ways. I'll say that a much larger Latino immigrant population, many of whom I think are restaurant or delivery workers post-shift, use the food trucks as a socialization hub in the evenings. I think that's wonderful, and I love that our park and its adjacent sidewalk area is able to serve different communities in different ways and helps ensure the massive public investment in this region is well utilized. Unfortunately, local property owners and residents often try to regulate and assert de facto ownership over parks and public spaces. It's a regular occurrence that I've encountered numerous times over working in government locally here for over a decade. I regularly heard from Brooklyn Heights residents attempting to limit the basketball courts and Brooklyn Bridge Park access points used primarily by Black youth. Prospect Park neighbors pushed for years to ban the barbecues used especially by families of color. As we heard tonight, and I often heard in those conversations, people bring up comments about people coming from outside of the neighborhood, outside of the city, and other places. We're talking about public land, public resources with massive public investment, and they should be used by the public. I acknowledge that some of the concerns we've heard tonight are legitimate. It's disappointing and unacceptable that our local officials and agencies are punting this problem to us. DEP and NYPD should be conducting light and noise enforcement. NYPD should be conducting traffic enforcement and ensuring crosswalks aren't blocked. On that point, I want to note too, this does happen regularly and is already illegal. That enforcement could be happening. And if the 108th is saying that they can't do it for some reason, that's just not factual. Sanitation in city and state parks should be providing appropriate litter collection. Further, I worry that completely opening up Center Boulevard at night by eliminating parking would have the unintended consequences of creating an even more attractive environment for racing and speeding. At the end of the day, these food trucks are here because people are frequenting them. I don't want to just talk about the ownership aspect, but the fact that people are coming to them and using them, right? They are hubs for community. I don't use them personally, but lots of people do, and they should have that right. They provide a service in an area with insufficient commercial establishments, and many of them also provide their own trash cans. I urge CB2 to focus to focus our efforts on appropriate calls for enforcement, including for our elected officials to prioritize these concerns. I think that looks like alternate side parking, metered parking, or reducing the hours for parking restrictions to as little as possible. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Tom.
Well, this is a statement.
Yes.
If I'm going to be censored by a member of the board for speaking too long, I take hindrance that I'm censored speaking about almost vulnerable, where you allow someone else to talk much longer than myself. Thank you.
Noted, and point taken. Nate hasn't gone yet.
These things are not working so well tonight. Okay, good. Hi, everybody. Just a question. What committees has this resolution, or has this been before? Just transportation? Okay, I just want to make note of the fact that there seems like there's a lot of intersecting issues here. And there's a lot of parties that maybe have not been before the board. I'm inclined to make a motion to table and refer this to.
There's a motion on the floor already. Okay, yes. Rules that overrules it.
And so we can discuss this in other committees. I think that the Small Business Committee needs to hear about this. I think that the, right, like to Tom's point, it seems like there are stakeholders who aren't here this evening. And I think that that's probably the best way to handle this evening.
Okay. I just want to say on behalf of all sides of the community that we represent everybody. We have spoken, and I'm going to go through chronologically on all sides. We have spoken to the mayor's office. We have spoken to the precincts. We have addressed this at cabinet meeting. It's in my minutes, and we will continue to address this going forward. A committee does not need to ask for more enforcement. City Services was part of this part of enforcement last year when we went down and there was a march program. We are going to again request the city of New York to have all of the agencies go down and take a look at an appropriate time. At the same time, it is up to you, everyone in this room, to decide how to vote on something that's here. And as Steve said, there's a motion to table on the floor, which takes precedence. But I did want to say that it just gives extra teeth for enforcement as well. So I wanted to just present both sides and let you know that this community board is on top of all of our issues, and we continue to do that together.
I can immediately follow up.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
You have to say point of information.
Support. Voting.
Previous motion was
Support to.
voting to support a no standing from 12 to 7, but tabling.
Who would that be sent?
Sorry?
Who would that?
Yeah, it's a letter requesting it.
We were just,
Yeah.
okay.
DOT, yep.
To DOT. Thanks.
But tabling overrules that. So show of hand, call the question. Yes, it could be a show of hands. To table.
All in favor of tabling, raise your hands.
Add one, Laura went up.
Four, five. 26. Agree, Ryan? 26.
By one. Awesome. All right. So this is tabled. And we didn't schedule budget, sorry, yes.
I'd like to refer this issue to both the Transportation Committee as well as to the Small Business Committee.
Yeah, just to fill it in. Just to fill it in. It's not just the committees that have been working on this. We have also met with our council person. The executive committee has been meeting with people. This obviously, as you said, you want to see it studied. You want to see what's going on, and it's been tabled. The appropriate committees are looking at it now. Okay.
Maury.
Just really quickly, I want to say, because I'm not sure, Nick, I don't know if you were here for the part of the meeting last month when it came up, but this actually same thing came up last month and we tabled it. So we're basically tabling and tabling and tabling and tabling. And it's not fair to our community members to whether you're for it or against it. Please stop. Whether you're for it or against it, they deserve to see whether the board is for or against it. And I don't think we should have tabled this. We've tabled it multiple times. This issue has been going on for more than a year. The board knows about it.
How would that work? No, we got 26. It was double. Yeah, it was double counted 26. Yeah, the work was checked. The evidence was there. Laura.
Motion that I think we can do tonight, which is to ask the relevant city agencies to identify 20 spaces in or adjacent to the park for vending that can be wired into the grid.
I would second
That would address the idling trucks and the generator issues. Yeah. Yes. Spots that can be plugged in with an electrical hookup.
And there's been a motion to table that motion. And it's been seconded. All right. Yep, all those in favor, show of hands.
Yeah.
It's tabling the new motion. Yeah.
But what?
I myself went to the community and distributed flyers. It's not just city lights. Nobody else chose to show up. No person did it. I discovered that this night and day. I had the agency come out. I had the mayor's office come out. I had the minister.
Sorry, Yolanda, we got to, yeah. We are. Yeah, so show of hands for tabling. For the grid.
Yeah, to identify spaces for vending that can be hooked into the grid. No.
Uh-oh.
That's the solution.
18.
If you don't like idling trucks.
Does not pass.
Okay.
We're voting. Okay.
Of course, to identify 20, or that's kind of an arbitrary number, open to friendly amendments, space.
We just say in your motion.
What?
Who is going to do that identification? What agency?
Okay, the Department of, so Parks, Health and Transportation, because we need to, well, they could do in the park vending.
I don't.
Is it food trucks? Is it
Or
vegetables?
carts.
Is it both? Yeah.
Oh, I'm,
Yeah.
yes. All right, so, yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
so you made the motion.
Vendors provides diversity, affordable and diverse and affordable options and value to the community and to everybody who walks on Central Boulevard or uses the park. So there's a need here. So we should find sensible ways to address. Okay. Oh, so, okay. Motion is to ask the Parks Department and the Department of Transportation to identify 20 spaces in or directly adjacent to the park for food vendors that can plug into the grid.
But that identify implies that those.
Wait, that's the second.
We need a second before we can move on, or, okay.
But I said.
Amparo.
Just want to clarify that identify implies that the potential exists, but wiring an empty sidewalk or identifying, wiring is not a thing that's, it's a capital project.
Sure.
But take the mic.
Yeah, but like if we can have parking meters, we can have, or electric vehicle chargers. For vendors.
Wait,
I think a friendly. Oh. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to your motion to identify the feasibility of blah, 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 blah.
That's much clearer. Camille had a question. Camille, can you hand the mic to Camille? Okay.
Great. I'm just very confused about this evening and the process. And I was very interested in hearing from the community on the topic. And we heard a treatise that was read and then the motion to table. And it seems like it halted discussion, which I think is unfair to me as a member of the community board, as well as the folks who came out tonight to advocate. I'm also not clear on what this motion has to do with the issue that was brought forward. I heard, concerns about rats, about oil and grease and time, and I'm not clear on how the motion to study the feasibility of plugging into the grid, what that has to do with the concerns that the community brought forth.
So they could be.
Right, give the mic. And wait,
Vendors go to licensed vendors who could be held accountable. Oh, sure.
Nick has a question.
Okay.
And we have 12 minutes left.
Hello? Okay, there we go. First of all, I just want to congratulate Laura on the roadway. And I want to just say that part of the reason why this was successful was due to the fact that this board moved in a deliberative and smart way over many years. And while I very much agree with the spirit of what she's proposing, I also agree with what Camille said, which is that this requires obviously not quick from the floor solutions. And I hoped in my tabling of this motion, I didn't hear a recommendation on what to do from any relevant committee about this during our meeting tonight. And I would love to have an informed vote on this issue. Clearly, people feel very strongly about it. And I don't think that the full board is a venue to try to gin this up from the hip. So I would prefer that we refer this back to our relevant committees where there's expertise and an opportunity to have exactly the kinds of conversations that are so lacking in this meeting this evening. And I would really prefer that we just move on and end the meeting at this point, because we've got lots of this deserves way more study than all of us trying to yell at each other over at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Oh, all right, you too. Go ahead, behind it.
Thank you. This was a public hearing. Members of the community came forward. We were concerned about, did notice go out to the community? And now we're going to vote on something entirely different? I urge the board to vote no. Thank you.
Riley, you want to explain the transportation committee history with this?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Riley, Chair of Transportation Committee. This was brought to the Transportation Committee already a couple of months ago. It was Tom's last meeting. It was determined that our small committee did not have broad enough wisdom on this, especially since most of us don't live on Center Boulevard, that this should be brought to discussion of the full board, since we are all very, very smart people with different experiences who live in this area. A lot of us have lived here a lot longer. A lot of us have been on this board a lot longer. So we thought that discussion, I think Tom suggested, discussion would be very, very beneficial. We may not have to decide anything tonight, but maybe discussion would be the best thing. Seems like it's getting passed over, but discussion is good.
Well, yeah, this issue is a complete stuck between a rock and a hard place. So there is no winning with this. And in that, okay, so after, in that spirit, Maury, Steve, for me, and then we gotta vote on this, and then we gotta get out.
Yeah, I just want to was this committee before? It's been discussed. We tried to get it I made a motion last month so that we could discuss it as a full board. It was immediately voted on to be tabled by the gentlewoman. And as a result, we didn't get to have a full discussion. And then this is exactly what's happening this month. It's been tabled before we were able to have a full discussion as a deliberative community board. And if we don't get the chance to discuss it, we don't get the chance to make a wise decision based on what information we get from our colleagues, as well as from the Transportation Committee, which has already have made recommendations on it and heard it for ages.
The fact that the motion has been tabled does not stop us from discussing it. The clock does. In a very brief discussion, I went on Fifth Avenue again the other day, and there were no vendor trucks lined up on Fifth Avenue. And parking regulations on Fifth Avenue say no parking. And the trucks are not there because the police make sure they're not there. So we have a problem here, which is not just a simple problem. We have a failure to enforce the law. But in order to do that, there has to be a law that is in violation. It is something that we have to decide at some point, whether it's no parking, no standing, no parking anytime, no standing anytime. The one thing that disappointed me tonight, which is why I asked about notice, is that I really expected there to be at least 15% of the people who would say, no, we want to park there at night. Instead, I only heard one person. I was surprised about that. Okay. And that's why I asked, but you did give your notification, so that's not the objection. We should discuss this item. We should vote on it. Perhaps not tonight, but we should vote on it.
I mean, all right. And I guess the other question is, how much longer can we kick this can down the road? I mean, the community came for a hearing today. Oh, yeah, we still are. I guess we're still in discussion. Could you? Yeah. Okay, one more time, restate the motion, and then I'll call the question. Laura,
Restate the motion?
yes, restate the motion.
Okay. As amended, yes. It's to ask the Parks Department and the Department of Transportation to identify 20 spaces in or adjacent to the park, to identify the feasibility of allocating legal spaces for vendors that can be wired into the grid.
That's been second.
Yep.
Yes,
Call-
Carol, second.
Call the question and yeah, yes.
I would have preferred had this been brought up to the people who had shared their point of view to get their perspective.
I mean,
Oh, Nelly, did you have your hand up? Yeah, okay. Nelly had a question and then we vote. Benji, Nelly.
Is
Yeah.
it possible to see the universe of solutions that have been presented? Because it seems like we keep looking at this from either a transportation angle or now from a city planning angle. I'd like to see, first of all, what the problem is that we're trying to solve, because we've heard so many different things. And then a menu of options that we can actually consider before us, rather than vote on one particular thing that's been proposed.
Yep, but this motion doesn't negate that. Like, we could still do that.
Right, right. But I'm saying this is going to extend the time that it's going to take the community board to consider this proposal. There's going to be a feasibility study, and the community has come to us, it sounds like, for a while now. So can, in adjacent to that, be some process where someone presents the menu of options? What are the solutions that are proposed? Can we see all of them so we can consider them at once?
That's the next motion.
But who am I directing it to? I guess it's not clear to me, because it sounds like the committee that it went to said, we're not going to consider this, we're going to bring it to the full board. So who am I actually presenting this motion to?
Yeah,
Who-
no, it's a very messy solution, a very messy situation. Lisa,
Thank you. This is a request from a neighborhood group for us to write a letter to support their request to a city agency to put up a sign. It doesn't mean the city agency is going to put up the sign. It doesn't mean that they're even going to do anything about our letter. They just want a letter.
and that motion was tabled. Yep.
But I should say, we have no authority here. We only write letters, and this was a very generous gesture to have a public hearing around writing a letter. I mean, public hearings are usually something, I know.
Right, for HQ2.
And or, the bridge, 59th Street Bridge. But it's not really, like, this is just something for public comment.
Right.
So we're being extremely generous to have a public hearing, write a letter, the committee could write a letter.
Yep.
Technically, that, the board office could write a letter. The office could write a letter. And I guess it's what I have to
Yep.
not really rise to the occasion of a public hearing. We've taken this and really like just, made
this
it out
far
of
as it
shape, right? So, and anyway.
Yeah, all right. Roll call vote.
Thank you.
On the feasibility study of the 20 spots wired to the grid.
Agree. You are agreeing with Laura's motion. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it was so late. Okay. All right, it's late. Applebag. Nellie Ashbar. Anatole Asheroff. John Bahia. Anne Marie Brankowski. Carisha Batan. She left. Carisha, yes or no? What'd she say? Well, I'm not supposed to, but okay. Nick Berkowitz?
No.
Danielle Brecker? Carlos Castillo Brook? Are you abstaining for cause? Okay. Lisa Charles? Tanya Chavez?
Yes.
Osmond Chowdhury? Stephen Cooper?
Yes.
Warren Davis?
No.
Lisa Della?
Yeah.
Maury Gallinoy?
Yes.
Samnith Gamir? Dr. Raj Giannousis?
Yes.
Alexandria Gonzalez? Camille Gray? Kenny Greenberg? Mohammed Hossein? Christine Hunter. Leland Kindell. Diana Ketchler. Withdrawing, Carisha Baton. James Kim. Ramik Kumar. Chimang Lama. Benjamin Lucas.
Yes.
Patrick Martinez. Tom Matusitz. Eric Nauberg. Andy Oliveris. Z Shanat. Riley Owens. Jolly Patel. Jolly Patel. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Omar Saab is absent. Roberta Saldana. Laura Shepherd. Ryan Smith. Caroline Spitzer. Lauren Springer. Akello Thomas.
Yes.
Mai Tran. Letitia Vasquez. Michael Zorab. Hey, give me a minute. Okay, yes is 28, no is 15, and abstention of 1. Motion carries.
All right. Motion to adjourn. Good night, everyone.